What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
If you're the guy who can't finish a sandwich, you think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You're watching 40 Days and Counting. This is my new live stream show that is a continuation of the old show I used to do, 40 Days and Counting. So excited to be here. If you guys are unaware, because I did an evening show a couple days ago, but this is the spiritual sequel continuation of my 40 Days and 40 Nights series that I did live every day, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. We're doing this new show, 40 Days and Counting, which will be essentially the same vibe of the old show, but it will be Tuesdays at 6 p.m., Fridays at 8 a.m. So this is the 8 a.m. version of that 40 Days and 40 Nights kind of thing I did. So excited to do this one, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot to talk about on this show. Later on, make sure you stay till the end. Got a huge announcement coming up that's personal for your boy. If you love my content, if you love following what I've been doing, big stuff happening at the end of the show, so make sure you stay tuned for that. We also will be talking about the Week 16 results from last night. We have now 4 teams that have advanced to the Elite 8, 3 of them out of the Big Ten, so a big night for the Big Ten. We'll break down those games in a little bit. We'll also talk about opening day. Mets get a big win over the Pirates last night, yesterday rather afternoon, beating up on Paul Skeens. Yankees a couple nights ago beat up on Logan Webb, and they got their first win of the season in San Francisco, so we'll discuss that. We'll also talk about some controversy involving the NBA and whether or not the NBA 65 game rule is antiquated and needs to be removed. Adam Silver, who is the commissioner of the NBA, is standing by the eligibility rule that requires all NBA players who want to win awards and make all NBA teams to play 65 games in a season. There's been a lot of hoopla around this award this rule, because of what's been going on with Cade Cunningham and his unlikelihood that he'll reach that 65 game threshold because he suffered a collapsed lung a couple weeks ago. So we'll give you some of Adam Silver's comments a little bit later. We'll also talk about a head coach making a return back to his old stomping grounds. We'll have some Daredevil Born Again Season 2 stuff to discuss. The debut of Season 2 dropped on Wednesday, so I'll give you guys my thoughts on that. And again, a big announcement coming up at the end of the show. So a lot to do here. A lot of fun is going to be had here on 40 Days and Counting, again, with your boy EJ Stewart, streaming live multiple spots, including live on YouTube, New Generation Media. If you're watching on YouTube, shout out to the YouTube chat. Make sure you give me a comment in the comment section. Make sure you give me a like in the like section. And of course, appreciate you guys for all the support you guys have had with me during this entire 2026 so far, where we've done a lot of live streaming on New Generation Media. That is the YouTube channel. Also, be sure to check us out on X, EJ_Stewart, where we are also streaming live. Make sure you give me a follow on X. And we are streaming live as well on Instagram, on IG Live. So make sure you follow me there. Action EJs, where you'll follow me there. And of course, all episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights gets podcasted to our podcast channel. Just search New Generation Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll get not just this show, 40 Days and Counting, not just 40 Days and 40 Nights, if you want to listen to those old shows that I did, where I did, again, 80 shows in the span of 8 weeks, essentially. You can also check out all the content we have on New Generation Media. So if you want to check out stuff we have with Hero Talk, you want to check out stuff we have with Imperial Broadcast, which is the Star Wars podcast my brothers and I, my brothers Shamari and Kendall host. You want to check out old episodes of Sports Talk that we've done. Off Script, the wrestling podcast I host with Lucas Goldman. We're expected to record a new episode tomorrow, so make sure you keep on the lookout for that. So plenty of awesome content is on the YouTube channel. Again, just search New Generation Media for YouTube, but also make sure you search the podcast channel for the audio versions of those shows. Just search New Generation Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, make sure you give me a 5-star review, and make sure you give us a nice little written review if you can. We greatly appreciate it. And subscribe to the channel, New Generation Podcast Network, where you'll get this wherever you get your podcast. So let's get right into the swing of things. It was a big night in March Madness. So we have a bunch of teams advancing to the Elite Eight. We have now Purdue, Iowa, Arizona, and Illinois. They win their games last night, so they move on to the regional finals of their respective brackets, and they have now an opportunity to advance to the Final Four. So let's begin with Purdue, who probably had the thrill overnight in a night that, at least in the first two games, had its fair share of thrillers. So Purdue, number 2 seed in the West region, they survived a major scare against a very tough number 11 seeded Texas Longhorns. They advanced to the Elite Eight. Trey Kaufman-Renz, the hero in this one. He tipped in a Braden Smith missed jumper late to put Purdue ahead with 0.7 seconds left in the game. This was a barber. This one came right down to the wire. I think when we look at this game, Texas is going to be thinking long and hard about their decision to take Matas Vukatitis out of the game. By them doing that, essentially opened the window for Purdue to crash the glass and Trey Kaufman-Renz to crash the glass on that final possession, and an offensive rebound and tip-in ends up being the difference in the game. Purdue's big man Oscar Pluff had fouled out, so that led Sean Miller to take Vukatitis out. Ended up being a mistake, and now they're going home. And Sean Miller, who is a very accomplished college basketball head coach, has now been to 9 Sweet 16s, has never made it to the Final Four. He's the only coach to make that many regional semifinals in March Madness and never make a Final Four. This Texas team was not expected to go nowhere near this far, so this was a pretty heroic run, I think, for them. So I don't think this will be looked at as a negative. They had guys playing very hurt in this game, so they are a tough team, no question about it. But Purdue squeaks it out in the end. And listen, I think Purdue, part of me, now this wasn't necessarily their best performance. Again, Texas in many ways gave them all they could handle. But here you have a Purdue team that came into this season, number 1 team in the country, that I think kind of got overlooked after they had some early stumbles. And for a team that had such high expectations because they have so much experience with Kaufman-Renz, Braden Smith, Lawyer, they have guys who have been there before, guys who have played in the national championship game. So they brought back so much talent. When they kind of faltered towards the early parts of the season and kind of knocked themselves off that one line, it seems like they kind of been the forgotten team in this tournament. In fact, it's the team that I think a lot of people have potentially being upset, because Purdue has had their fair share of upsets throughout their recent March Madness memories. We'll remember them losing to a 16 seed. We'll remember so many of their early exits with Matt Painter. But now you're talking about an Elite Eight run for a team that's now starting to look a lot more comfortable in March Madness, for a team that was accustomed to a lot of early exits. Here they are now, back-to-back Sweet 16s. They have a Final Four from 2 years ago. So this is not your old Purdue that you can kind of write off and say, oh, this is a team that you can knock out early in your bracket. They've played extremely well. Again, it's a tough physical game. Very fascinated how a team like Purdue, who has the offensive firepower, I think, to match a team like Arizona potentially, how they adjust coming from this rock fight. Because this was a rock fight in this one. This was not your high-scoring kind of game. It was a well-played game, but this was not a high-scoring game. This was not a game where this was necessarily, the prettiest when it came to the outcome for Purdue. And again, it took a late second tip-in to win this one. But I think it was still an effort that I think Purdue fans will definitely be proud of. It was gritty. It wasn't pretty, but it was gritty. So they advance into the next round of the tournament. Again, Matt Painter, it feels like, it's hard to say he's become the new Mark Few, because Mark Few is still around, obviously. But it feels like he is kind of the other coach in this college basketball landscape, this great coach who has accomplished so much at one program, but has yet to get over the hump. He seems to be like kind of the next guy, or the second guy, who we look at and say, okay, when is his opportunity going to happen? When is he finally going to win a national championship? Because this is a Purdue team that has all the makings of a championship team. They have a great backcourt with Smith and Lawyer. Kaufman-Renz was a difficult matchup all game. He had 20 points, 8 for 10 from the field in this one. So they've had the the pieces. They had all the stuff in place, and Painter's done a phenomenal job. Has not won a national championship yet. We'll have to see if he'll be able to get that done this time around. But they advance in a thriller. 79-77 was the final score as they move on to now face Arizona. So this was the game I talked about a ton that I really was looking forward to. This was Arizona versus Arkansas, and I thought this would be a much more competitive game than it was. Arizona rolled in this one. This is one of those games that, maybe people don't care so much about my personal individual bracket. It's not doing that great, by the way. It's not terrible. I have 3 teams still left in the Final Four, but still not like it's like I've done amazing. But this is one of those W's that you feel good about in your bracket because so many were ready to run to Arkansas to win this game. We know how spectacular Darius Acuff is, and he was spectacular in this one. He had 28 points. He only shot 8 for 19 from the field, but he still showed all the reasons why he's going to be a top pick in this upcoming draft. But this was about really Arizona just having just way more talent, I think, than Arkansas when they all came down to it. Their backcourt was deeper, their front court was deeper, and they were more physical. They were the tougher team in the paint. To think about a team scoring 109 points in a college basketball game and making only 5 threes. I mean, I know college basketball is not necessarily the NBA, but we have seen college basketball teams now do way more when it comes to attacking the 3-ball and understanding that is kind of the analytics forward way to play basketball is 3 is more than 2. And here you had a team in Arizona who just bludgeoned Arkansas, a team that is, I don't think they're the biggest team, but they're an athletic team. They're a strong team, and just bludgeoned them in the paint, which was going to be Arkansas's problem, I think, coming into this game, which is why I had Arizona winning and why I felt confident about it in my bracket, was would Arkansas be able to defend at the level it takes to beat a team like Arizona, who we don't know about their coach Tommy Lloyd, who's not been there for several years. I think this was his 4th year there. He comes from the Mark Few coaching tree. Now, this has become a Mark Few conversation. I promise that was not this is by accident. It's not on purpose. But he comes from the Mark Few coaching tree. He was Mark Few's associate head coach at Gonzaga for a long period of time. And if you think about those Gonzaga teams during that era, when you think about the Chet Holmgren teams and the Jalen Suggs teams and the teams that with Karnowski and Nigel Williams-Goss and those teams that were getting to Final Fours and making deep runs and having undefeated seasons or 1-loss seasons. When you think about those Gonzaga teams, Tommy Lloyd was instrumental in building those teams. Obviously, Mark Few's the head coach; he gets a lot of credit. But Lloyd was the associate head coach. He was instrumental in their offensive execution. He was instrumental when it came to recruiting, especially when it came to international recruiting. So the Rui Hachimuras, again, I mentioned the Karnowskis, the Canadian guys that they've had over the years, Kevin Pangos, all those guys. That is a lot of Tommy Lloyd, Domantas Sabonis. And what you see from this Arizona team is what it feels like Gonzaga on steroids. Maybe that's why I love them so much. Maybe that's why I had them winning this tournament. And maybe I'll be foolish in the end because Gonzaga has not won a title themselves. But what I see is a program that looks like Gonzaga on steroids. It really kind of looks like Gonzaga from a couple years ago, to be honest. You got NBA guys like Braden Berries and Cole Pete. Both of those guys have phenomenal games. Berry has 23 points. Cole Pete has 21 points. Continues to be the kind of defensive ace and jack of all trades kind of forward that they have in the front court. Then you have the international flair. You got Krivas. You got Karshinovikov and I butchered that. Karchenkov. Sorry about that. Ivan Karchenkov. You have now international wave, freshman, a senior leader and floor general and someone like Jaden Bradley. I've said all year. I've said, you guys who have watched me on 48 and 40 Nights know, and I've said it a ton. I think Arizona is the best team. Doesn't mean that they win. They could very well lose. That's the nature of March Madness. And that's the nature of college basketball. And again, we've seen what's happened to Gonzaga in March Madness and how they haven't been able to get it quite done when it comes to winning a championship. And Arizona, similar to Purdue, has kind of had this bugaboo of being like this team that has had all this talent under Tommy Lloyd, but hasn't been able to get over the hump when it comes to March Madness. This feels like a different team. I don't know if they win a championship. I think that they will, but I don't think this is a team that loses to Purdue on Saturday. I think that Arizona, again, is a wagon. They can beat you in multiple ways. This game, they decided they shot 5 for 8 from 3, so they shot the ball well from 3. but they didn't need to really hurt you from three. I think I heard in the broadcast, or I heard in the game, or after the game rather, this was the first time as team, I think in March Madness history, shot 60, at least 60% from the field, 60% from three, and I think scored 105 points, something crazy. Like this was, I mean, they did whatever they wanted offensively. So this was a dominant performance, very impressive by Arizona. And again, they will move on to face Purdue. I'm taking Arizona to go on to the Final Four. It's not my Final Four matchup. I had Arizona facing Gonzaga in this one, which would have been very cathartic and very apropos to have Tommy Lloyd facing his former mentor. We won't have that, but we will have, I think, a good matchup, a fun matchup to watch. Key to this game, I think, will be can Purdue. They can't let this game get the way Arkansas got this game, where it's 109 points being scored. Arkansas wants to play an up and down kind of game. That's the way Calipari has coached them. That's the way SEC ball is played. Arizona is with the ish, as they would say, as kids would say. I mean, they are totally fine playing that style if that's how you want to play. If you're not able to consistently defend, Arkansas has had trouble shooting the three ball, and that also really gave them a tough time in terms of being able to win this game. But if Purdue lets this game become a shootout, they have no shot. They're a very good team, and they are a good offensive team, but I don't think they have the firepower to match Arizona. Arizona, I think, is too quick, too physical. But if they can get this to be a kind of classic Big Ten kind of game, again, Arizona going to win that kind of game too, but I think it gives Purdue a better shot. I think this is going to be a big Braden Smith game where I think he's going to have to really control the pace and really kind of be the true floor general of this game and make sure that you're not seeing this game get out of hand, because Arizona's the kind of team that would love, I think, invite playing a game like this where almost 200 combined points get scored in the Arkansas-Arizona game. So Arizona-Arkansas, that's going to be your West Regional final coming up on Saturday, so that will be a ton of fun. Really excited to see how that shakes out. Let's go over to the other side of the region, the other side of the bracket rather. So it began with another upset here. So the Iowa Hawkeyes, they keep on dancing, man. Here we go. So Iowa makes their first Elite Eight since 1987. This is an Iowa team that beat Nebraska. They took advantage of quite a bizarre way to end this game for Nebraska in this one. This is their first Elite Eight since 1987. So shout out to the Hawkeyes. I know a lot of people in Iowa are really excited. Iowa outscored Nebraska 15-6 in the last 6:15 to sprint ahead of the Cornhuskers, sealing the win on, again, an unforgivable gaffe if you're a Nebraska fan at this point. Now, maybe you feel like, listen, this is a team that never won an NCAA tournament game, so how mad could you be about an elite Sweet 16 appearance? But how do you have four people on the court in the biggest defensive possession of the season? So there's about a minute left in the game. They hit a three and one. I forgot how they tied. They got cut it three, but they cut it to three, and is a inbound possession underneath the basket. Nebraska has four people on the court. And shout out to Bennett Sturts. He's pointing the inbound to be like, yo, throw it down. Like, there's nobody guarding our center down the court. Here's Alvaro Figueres, who was the hero in the second round, wide open, and he puts in an and one. One of the Nebraska big men tried to hustle down to try to stop him, and it was a great effort to try to keep him away from going to the basket. This was not a cheap foul at all. But Alvaro Figueres finishes strong and gets an and one. That seals the game. This is now a 6-point game with about less than a minute left, 57 seconds left in the game. Nebraska at that point would have needed a miracle to come back. So that was a crushing blow for Nebraska to lose in that way, where if you get one stop, you're one possession away from tying the game potentially, especially with the way Sanford had been shooting the ball. You had to like your chances to maybe get a three to make this game interesting. Nebraska had led this game pretty much the entire way. Iowa did not take their first lead of the game until the 2:10 mark, where Bennett Sturts 3 put them up 68-65. They then got another three from Tate Sage, and that put them up by 6 points. And again, this became a tough kind of hill to climb from Nebraska. But I hate to do this because, again, they had a great season. And Fred Hoiberg has done a phenomenal job in Nebraska since he got there. He's been awesome. But doesn't that feel like a Fred Hoiberg team kind of lost? Like, the thing about Fred Hoiberg in terms of his coaching career, and again, he's a very good coach. But the thing about his coaching career is it always feels like there's been something missing with the offensive brilliance that they have, whether it was here with the Nebraska Cornhuskers or whether he was at Iowa State. The talent that they've been able to amass, not necessarily Nebraska, but certainly at Iowa State. It still always felt like, for a team that people usually always had high hopes for because of how well they execute, simple things seem to get in the way. And he goes to the NBA, and there's a lot of excitement because, hey, this is a guy who's an innovative offensive coach. He'll come into the NBA, and he'll, make waves coaching the Chicago Bulls. And it was the same thing. He couldn't seem to quite get on the same page with everybody. It's for them to lose this way, I'm sorry, it just felt very Fred Hoiberg. And this is the kind of thing he's going to wear until he finds a way to break through and maybe get Nebraska to a Final Four. That sounds maybe extreme, but in today's college basketball landscape, everything's on the table. Anybody can win. I think Rick Pitino maybe raised some eyebrows yesterday when we said that there are no longer any blue bloods. I think he's kind of right. Like, I think there always will be blue bloods, but I think the idea that because you're North Carolina, you're automatically going to be granted a certain level of success, or that if you're Nebraska, you're guaranteed to consistently be a bottom feeder. Like, that's not the case anymore. Like, that was the case in 1985 and 1995 and some of these other, different eras of college basketball. That's not the case now because of NIL and transfer portal. So this is a tough break for Nebraska. Like, again, it's a team that had never won an NCAA tournament game. As I get a tissue real quick, because I'm in that phase of the year where you do the deal of, like, is it a cold or is it allergies? I think this is a cold. I thought this was allergies, but now I woke up feeling kind of crappy, and I'm like, I think I have a cold. I don't think I have allergies, but probably do the show. Got my tea, got everything together, but don't want to be having my nose running all crazy while I'm doing the show. But no, I think you look at Nebraska. Yeah, like, this is a tough break. I mean, you feel like you get a gift where you got Florida, the defending national champions, gets knocked out in the second round by a 9-seed Iowa team that you've seen before, so you're very familiar with them. Obviously, that means they're familiar with you too. I think that familiarity had a great deal with why they were able to turn off the water on Nebraska, who only scored 25 points in the second half. But you get a 9-seed, you avoid the defending national champs number 1 seed, and you don't find a way to get it done when you've led or been tied for 46 minutes of the game is kind of a brutal way to go out. And then on the flip side, you see Houston goes out of their game. We'll talk about that in a second, but Houston goes out. So now you face a team in Illinois, so you split with during the regular season. You're probably like, yo, like this, the opportunity was there. This is a missed opportunity for Nebraska, who absolutely, to me, with the way they have been playing up until really the 2:10 mark of this game, looked like a team that maybe could get to a Final Four, and they don't get it done. But a major props to Iowa. Their bench continues to be a force. Tate Sage had 19 in this one. Alvaro Fulgueras, again, remains the hero because the and one layup he had. He also posterized Nebraska late in the game as well to have another dunk that sealed this one. I put up on Twitter that people didn't seem to find as a joke, but it was obviously a joke. But I put Caitlin Clark, number 1 Iowa basketball player. Number 2, Alvaro Fulgueras. After the big 3 he hit in the previous games and to help seal the win against Florida, then the N1 to seal this one against Iowa, then he had a poster to add on top of that. This guy is an Iowa folk hero at this point. So the Hawkeyes now 1 win away from going to their first Final Four ever. This is their first Elite 8 since the 87. Or I don't know. Did they go to Final Four in 87? I might be wrong about that, so apologies about that. I don't want to be talking crazy. But this is their first. Elite 8, which is remarkable. Again, it speaks to college basketball landscape. What I said is that, like, this is a situation where anybody can have great success. This will be their first opportunity to get to their first Final Four Although, yeah, right, they never been to the Final Four. So that was when the great Tom Davis was coaching them back in '87. They lost in the Elite Eight. Back then, they lost to UNLV, which is surprise. UNLV at that time was a wagon. But when they had Roy Marble, B.J. Armstrong, Kevin Gamble, this was a team that was loaded back in the day. They had a lot of NBA guys on this team. Didn't quite get it done when it came to getting to the Final Four. But Iowa now has that opportunity coming up in another Big Ten showdown. Because, again, this was a... Say what you want. First of all, this was an awesome game, another excellent, well-played game. My brother texted me midway through saying this is high-level basketball happens between Iowa and Nebraska. Now, it came a little more rock fight-ish towards the second half, but still another well-played game and another great showcase for the Big Ten. And now you have an all Big Ten Elite Eight happening in the South region because you got Iowa, who advances. They go on to the next round. They will now face Illinois, who outlasted Houston to advance to the Elite Eight. Fighting Illini, man, this is their second Elite Eight under head coach Brad Underwood. They defeat Houston in H-Town, 65-55. Illinois' defense was phenomenal in this one. They kept a team that relies heavily on jump shots to just 34% shooting, and I thought they did a really good job of contesting jump shots, making things difficult on Houston. This is kind of Houston's deal when they lose. I hate to do this because I feel like maybe it's like maybe there's some kind of confirmation bias or something with them. But it just feels like for a team that is constantly seeded very high, it constantly puts up great regular seasons. And I've talked about my love for Calvin Sampson. I think he's an awesome head coach. And just from my short interactions with him, I'm very impressed with him as a person as well. But it just feels like they never quite have the offensive firepower to overwhelm teams the way a typical power team should. We know they're going to defend. We know they're going to rebound. And we know that now, not this year's team, but typically they can hurt you in the paint. This year's team was much more of a jump shooting team because it was a guard laden team, right? Kinston Flemings, Uzan, Sharp. These are all shooters essentially, especially Kinston Flemings and Sharp. So I think that was one of the problems that Illinois would find a way to take away the paint completely and force Houston into some tough shots. And Houston just couldn't find the stroke. And that's what happens sometimes, but it feels like it happens to them quite often for a team that's ranked very high. Illinois looked like a more talented team. The freshman duo of David Rakovic and Keaton Vogler, they combined for 27 points this one. Andre Stojakovic, the super transfer, he has 13 off the bench. And this was not necessarily the prettiest game, but it's never pretty when you beat Houston. That's just kind of the deal, that they kind of get you in these kind of games. And Illinois played well enough offensively, and they had good enough spurts well enough throughout the game to keep Houston at bay. And they now advance. And, Illinois looks really good. The fact that you got Wagner, who only had 13, I think he was 4 for 14 from the field, wasn't the greatest shooting game. Played well, though. It's one of those typical games where you can play well without shooting well. I think Keaton Vogler, his floor game was really good. He made really good decisions. Houston was hell-bent on trying to completely take him away. They were blitzing every screen. They were trying to get the ball out of his hands. And I thought for the most part he made really good decisions with the basketball. And I think Illinois as a team really did a good job of not panicking, especially when the offense at times sputtered. Because, again, when you're playing a team like Houston, I just think you got to live with the fact that your offense is probably not going to have its best day. But they shot 43% from the field, which was good enough. They shot 39% from three, which was good enough. And, again, defensively, they were really sound. In the first half, they only allowed Houston to shoot 27% from the field. They shot 34% overall, but they were awful in the first half. They only had 22 points in the first half. So Illinois and their defense really held strong in this one. And now, obviously, for Houston, questions surround, what the future is of Calvin Sampson, whether or not this is the end for him. If it is the end, tough way to end your career, but a awesome last chapter of your career, especially for a guy who was essentially disgraced in college basketball because of how things ended at Indiana and was kind of bouncing around as like a, he was like a, an assistant in the NBA, which is, not a shameful job at all. This, to be an NBA assistant. But for a guy who was a decorated college basketball head coach, him to be bouncing around as an NBA assistant felt a little weird, considering we knew what he was as a head coach. So the fact that he was able to get to Houston, a program that really was dormant pretty much before he got there. I mean, they were nothing. They were a program that seemed to be kind of searching for decades for that Phi Slamma Jamma pride that they instilled in the 80s and what Alvin Hayes did in the 70s and 60s. Like this, it was a long day since Houston had become this kind of program. For Kelvin to do it first in the American Conference, and then I think people had questions. All right, well, what happens when they step up with the big boys and they go into this new Big 12 that was lauded, and rightfully so, as this awesome basketball conference? And they showed up. They've pretty much run the conference since they got to the Big 12. So he's done an awesome job there at Houston. Again, a really great end, late chapter to his career. This is the end of his career. But of course, no national championship. He did have that opportunity last year. They lost to Florida. So that would be the one thing on his resume that we would say, well, he never got a championship. But nonetheless, still phenomenal career, phenomenal coach. But tough way to go out. They get to the South region. They get to play in Houston, Toyota Center. Think that that's an opportunity for Houston now with no Florida out of the way to maybe kind of coast to potentially a Elite Eight. But Iowa had another thing coming. Brad Underwood, maybe one of the most underrated coaches in college basketball. I mean, he got to Illinois, and they've pretty much been a tournament team, perennial tournament team ever since. Success has been up and down. They've had some early exits, but they went to one Elite Eight under him. But now a second Elite Eight and a team that is tough. A team that I right now, if you ask me where I lean Illinois is making the national championship, making the Final Four. They'll, of course, face Iowa in the next round. I just think that Illinois, I think, defends better. Illinois will have more effective size, I think. And I expect it to be a good game. These Big Ten games have been, so I expect this to be another good, close game. Leaning a little bit toward the Fighting Illini in this one. I will say one more thing before we move on and wrap up a bow on March Madness. It was surreal to watch that game. I'm up late at night, later than I should be up, because I had to get up and do the show, but this was what was happening, March Madness, so I got to make sure I'm ready to talk about it, right? And I'm watching this game, and you don't know how surreal it is to watch a college basketball game with Andrei Stojakovic, the son of Paige Stojakovic, the former Sacramento Kings legend, and hear Kevin Harlan on the call, much alike me staying up probably way later than I should in a spring night for the NBA playoffs, or maybe even a regular season game, because I was that kind of a crazy kid, staying up late to watch his dad play, and Kevin Harlan's on the call. So I'm hearing the Stojakovic for three, or Stojakovic on the drive, and it's just like, I'm like, this feels like I'm in a time capsule. Like, I know Kevin Harlan has called games for probably other sons of NBA players. Maybe it's because Stojakovic is such like a name that you can never forget, because it's such a unique last name, unique pronunciation. You think of Stojakovic, there's only one Stojakovic people would ever probably think of in the history of mankind, pretty much. I can't think of any other famous Stojakovic. And Kevin Harlan being like the second guy on TNT, oftentimes doing those West Coast games. So I'm watching a lot of Sacramento Kings late night games, and to hear Kevin Harlan doing the Stojakovic calls, it was like, man, this is crazy. Like, time flies, and I'm getting old, apparently, because I remember obviously watching his dad play. Very interesting watching Andre play. Andre is not very different than his dad, but a little different. Like, his dad obviously is one of the greatest shooters ever played in the NBA. His dad got it done from not just three, but also the mid-range as a sniper. Andre is not your three-point sniper. Andre is a slasher, and he was getting in the paint. He's good with the mid-range. He's good with turnaround fadeaways and things like that, but a lot of it is going to be in the intermediate or him getting all the way to the rim. He is aggressive as an attacker, and he put a lot of pressure on Houston in this game. He was, I think, in many ways, the X factor that allowed Illinois to get it done. He will continue to be an X factor for them. He was battling a little injury, which is why he's been coming off the bench. I think bringing him off the bench actually has been a really nice boost for Illinois, because they already have a high-powered offensive starting lineup. Andre can come in against some of the team's second units, or come in fresh against other teams' first units that are tired and just attack. And that's what you saw him do in this one. So that's going to be another good game. Right now, you ask me where I'm leaning. I'm leaning Illinois advanced to the Final Four. I'm leaning Arizona advancing to the Final Four. Those would be my two teams I have advancing in the Elite Eight. But you got some absolute barn burners coming up later tonight. If you love the action from last night, buckle up because tonight it gets, in my opinion, better. Because you're going to have St. John's, Duke, 7:10, Washington, D.C., Michigan, Alabama around 7:30. That is going to be a fun one. And then you're going to have the second part of this doubleheader, UConn, Michigan State. They'll play the winner of St. John's, Duke. Iowa State, Tennessee. They'll play the winner of Alabama, Michigan. So these are more awesome matchup coming up here in this week 16. We'll see who punches their ticket to the Elite Eight later tonight. And of course, when I come back next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m., I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about as we get ready for, at that point, previewing the Final Four, which that is going to be a ton of fun. So again, this is 40 Days and Counting with your boy EJ Stewart, streaming live on YouTube, streaming live on X, streaming live on Instagram. You want to get involved in the show, you want to be active in the show, get in the comment section, let me know what you think about what happened last night or what you think about happening in the world of sports and pop culture. Shout out to my guy Matthew Graves. He's in the chat today. Good morning, EJ. My Cougs picked a hell of a night to go cold. May as well have been a blowout. Yeah, that's like that. That is what my good friend Maggie Gray calls a long goodbye. That was one of those games where they were close enough in it to where it's like you're not going to turn it off. But they never really were in a situation where they were going to win that game. I think that at one point late in the game they cut it to 6, but at that point it's like a minute left in the game. You would have needed a miracle to come back. And this was one of those, you got down by 13, 14 points, and it was just like the long goodbye. It was all right. This game is not really going to end up being super close. I mean, it might be close, but we're probably not going to win this one. But, you know, I got to stick around to see the end because you never know what's going to happen. And, yeah, you almost prefer to just lose by 30. So, all right, well, I can just turn this off. I always wonder how people feel. Would you prefer to have, like, a heartbreaking loss in like a Sweet 16 or any kind of one-game elimination situation, or would you prefer to be blown out and embarrassed? I think I prefer to be blown out and embarrassed. I'll be honest, because the close games keep you up at night. The close games are the ones you're thinking about for a long time. You think, man, things would have changed. Like for example, like my Gonzaga Bulldogs, 2 national championship appearances. I think about the second one mostly because of what happened in the first game at the Final Four, where they had to play double overtime, and it took a miracle shot from Jalen Suggs to advance. But when I think of like missed championship opportunities, I still think of the first one way more than the second one, where they were in a one-possession game against North Carolina, in a game that they absolutely could have and I think should have won if Shemmy Karnowski doesn't shoot like 2 for 11 for a guy that only shoots 5 feet away from the basket. I don't know what he shot, but it was something horrendous. If he doesn't play that poorly, he has even a B- game. Gonzaga wins convincingly. That's how bad he was. And I love Shemek, so shout out to Shemek. No beef to him, no diss to him. I'm sure if I sleep day up night, I'm sure he stays up at night even worse than I do, and I only wish him the best. I think he's an assistant now. I think he's an assistant in Arizona, actually, so shout out to Big Shem. But I think about that loss and what it would have meant beating North Carolina, winning a national championship, how much it would have changed the program, how much it would have changed the perception of Mark Few, how much it would have changed just my personal well-being for a guy who has not seen any of his favorite teams win a championship since the Miami Hurricanes won a national title in the 01 season. How much my life would have changed and felt better at walking around as if my team would have seen one of my teams win a championship at this point. I guess I saw the Liberty win, so that did help a little bit, but it's still not obviously like men's college basketball for me in terms of my interests. Like men's college basketball was super high, so sometimes I'm looking at a Jeremy Pargo picture that's hanging up on my wall. I'm staring right at it now. Shout out to Jeremy Pargo, but no, I think about that loss a lot worse than like national championship game against Baylor. The Gonzaga is undefeated. You get blown out in a game that was never close. That was also kind of a long goodbye kind of game. It's like, what's there to think about? You got outplayed. Like, you didn't play well. You had no chance to win based on how you played. I always think about, man, Gonzaga would have performed better, or at least just had a normal close game against UCLA in the Final Four I still am convinced the game would have been different against Baylor. I thought that they had no legs. It seemed obvious they had no legs when they ended up facing Baylor in that national championship game. Baylor had a runaway blowout win against Houston, and they came in fresh as daisies, and they attacked Gonzaga. Like they deserved the national championship. I'm not making excuses, but because they handled business, Gonzaga didn't against a double-digit seed themselves in UCLA. But at least I think they were a double-digit seed. They were like a 10 seed, I think it was at the time, either 10 or 9 or whatever. But yeah, that's one you think about. These games sucks, but I think you forget about this one. I think Matthew Gray, I think you'll be thinking more about your close national championship game loss rather than, as painful as it was to have an opportunity on what's not your home court, but in your home city to advance to a Final Four, to lose the way they did kind of convincingly. I think you will kind of forget about that one. But probably was the way to stay up late to watch that one, even in Central Time. That game, Central Time, probably would have ended around 11 p.m. You're like, I stayed up to watch this. Not fun. Not fun at all. But March Madness has been fun. That's the deal with March Madness, is that it's fun for the teams that are involved. Not fun once your team goes out. And that's the reality of it. But we trug along. Again, great games tonight. St. John's versus Duke. UConn versus Michigan State. Those winners will face each other. You got Iowa State, Tennessee, late game, early game, Alabama, Michigan. Those will also be fun games to watch as we move on from this week 16. Let's talk a little baseball. So, it was a great opening day for both the Mets and the Yankees. I thought they both looked very impressive in their opening day debuts. You had the Yankees out in San Francisco on Wednesday night on Netflix. They beat up on the Giants. You had the Mets yesterday, opening day on NBC. So both New York teams get this kind of exclusive window. I guess the Mets weren't a window because I think there were a couple early games, one early game I think I saw. I know one thing I'll say before I continue. I'll get to more old man complaining about baseball stuff while we're talking about this, but I just want to begin with this because this applies to both. This applies to particularly yesterday. I think baseball needs to. I don't know why baseball doesn't appreciate their opening day as much as its fans do, as much as I do as a baseball fan. Like, the Mets start at 1:15, which, it's fine. A 1 o'clock start. Mets start an opening day. Typically, it's an opening day, 1 p.m. start, so that's not surprising. I was stunned at just the lack of day games that were happening yesterday, or the lack of games that started at 1. I'm used to being able to flip around. This is where if you add the MLB extra innings, there's now MLB TV, but I guess it's now technically ESPN. I think we get a whole deal into the streaming stuff. But I'm used to say, I can watch the Mets, but I also flip around and see some of the other games that are going on. And I was stunned to be like, it's 1 o'clock and there's only one baseball game happening. That seemed sacrilegious in my opinion. I didn't appreciate that at all. And I think a lot of baseball fans are like, how the hell do we have all these games? Okay, the Mets started at 1. Okay, Cubs have a local 1 p.m. start, 2 p.m. Central, and the Brewers did as well. Then some of these other teams, they were playing like later games. And again, I'm like, this is supposed to be our national pastime. First game of the season, everybody should be playing at 1 p.m. I don't know. I thought that was a given. I mean, Baltimore, they start at 3:05. Why are they playing at 3:05? That's a bizarre time to start your season, especially with a game ending that's going to end in Baltimore rush hour. So that means now you're adding on to people that are working regularly. Now you're adding travel for the baseball game involved with what happens with traffic. I'm not saying Baltimore, and I've been there because my fiance's from there. I'm not saying it's the biggest city when it comes to traffic, but I'm sure yesterday was a bigger nightmare than most. Cincinnati playing later. Houston and the Angels playing later. I didn't get this. I was like, where are the 1 o'clock games? 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, those should be all the starts. And then the West Coast games all start at 4. It seemed to be something that should have been simple. And Major League Baseball, as I saw Chris Mad Russo say, for the search for the almighty dollar, they seem to have just like devalued some of the traditions that make opening day special. So I didn't love that. I love that the Mets were playing at 1 o'clock. That felt very normal. I didn't get to see my SNY, which that part of it, I'm just going to adjust my picture because I don't like how it's a little crooked. That part of it didn't bother me as much as it's been bothering other people. It's like, Mets are a national team. Sports have national TV games. Like, maybe I'm accustomed to seeing the Knicks starting their first game of the season on ESPN or something like that. Like, I don't know. It didn't bother me as much as it bothered some Yankee fans that they weren't on Yes, or some Mets fans that they didn't start on SNY. I don't know. That part of it didn't bother me. I was more bothered by, in terms of just like how Major League Baseball worked, the actual time in terms of like where all the day games, where all the afternoon slates. Like, that's where we get to see all the teams and follow the action as it's all going on at the same time. That's what makes it fun. I don't know why they got rid of that, but again, baseball making bad decisions. Surprise, surprise. So I'll start with the Mets here. I thought the Mets looked really good yesterday. We'll get to, obviously, the Wednesday game with the Yankees in a second. But I thought the Mets looked really good. They roughed up Paul Skeens with the help of O'Neal Cruz, who started the season as a complete disaster in center field, which maybe will be a story for the Pirates moving forward in terms of what his position is. It seemed to have issues with the sun on a triple from Beatty. He comes in. It was a well-hit ball, so I had no problem with him airing it as a triple, not an error. But he comes in early on a ball that then flies over his head. Then, of course, Simeon hits a high sky ball that should have been an out, and he loses it in the sun. So O'Neal Cruz was a disaster. Skeens didn't help himself. He wasn't on his best stuff. I know Skeens tried to kind of downplay and say, oh, well, there wasn't hard hit balls, and typically the batting average on those hit balls is low, so I know I'll be fine. Which, I don't know if he's not wrong, but I don't think he still pitched well. He pitched as poorly as him lasting just 2/3 of an inning, giving up 5 runs. No, O'Neal Cruz again helped him a ton with that. But I still think he put himself in danger. He put himself in a position to have bad things happen because of his inability to throw strikes. So Skeens struggled. Mets roughed him up. This was Freddie Peralta's debut with the New York Mets. I'll be honest, bit of a mixed bag. I think he saw some of the strikeout stuff. He had 7 strikeouts in 5 innings. But then he gave up some home runs. Brandon Lau had 2 off of him. One, I think, Peralta felt like really wasn't a mistake, but the ball kind of caught the wind, and it was a windy day yesterday. Beautiful day in New York City, but a windy day. Ball caught the wind and thought he flew out. He thought it flew out more than it being maybe a bad pitch. But 4 earned, 5 innings, 7 strikeouts. Again, up and down. Some parts of the performance were excellent. You definitely saw ace stuff. Some parts, again, the 2 home runs, you look at it and say, wish would have done a little better, especially in a game where you probably could assume that you were going to have to keep the Pirates' offense to at most 3 runs to win, because Paul Skeens is so excellent. He gave up 2 runs in the first inning and then eventually give up 4. Obviously, he had some run support to play with, so it wasn't like it was a huge deal, but wasn't the cleanest performance for Freddie Peralta. I think he'll be much better. Nothing to freak out about. But if you were really excited about Fastball Freddie coming to Queens and seeing how he was going to dominate, this was not a dominant performance for him, but it was good enough to win. He does get the W in this one. Big story was Carson Bench, who hit his first home run in the big leagues, and how awesome is that to make your Major League debut? And it also hit a home run in your Major League debut, and he's going to be one of the young players to watch all throughout Major League Baseball this upcoming season, and he did disappoint in his first ability to show what he could do. Again, he hits a home run. He walked, ended up having a really good day, 1 for 3 after striking out in his first 2 at-bats, struck out on 3 pitches, the first at-bat, which I think he said that he chalked up to nerves. He's like, yeah, man, I was nervous. I'm going up to the plate. It's my first at-bat ever. But he rebounded and did a very good job. The Mets, and again, they pitching, the sheet wasn't clean. Myers gave up a home run, Tobias Myers, who I think he's going to be a big piece for this team. He threw 3 innings in this one. He ended up pitching fine. That was the one mistake he made. In fact, it was the only hit he gave up in the 3 innings he pitched. But no, Tobias Myers, I think, is going to be a crucial part of this team. I think having that long guy, having that guy who can pitch in long relief, who can give you multiple innings at a time. There can be times this year, I guarantee you, where he's going to have to start for them, and he's a more than competent starter. Now, everybody's healthy, and everybody ended up performing pretty well in spring training, so I'm fine with the rotation as is. But I was someone who thought that Tobias Myers should have got a better look as a piece of the rotation, because I assumed somebody was going to get hurt or somebody was going to struggle, and nobody got hurt. Nobody really struggled. We saw, Manaea, who's now in the bullpen. He's throwing 80 miles an hour, so he didn't struggle in terms of stats, but he struggled in terms of his actual effectiveness, in terms of what his stuff was doing at this point in the season. So right now Tobias is gonna have this role, but I think it's gonna be an important one because the Mets didn't really have this guy last year, a guy who could give them 2-3 innings at a time and stabilize a game. And where Freddie gives you only 5, before it was the Mets had a bunch of 1 inning guys, so they were trying to just like piecemeal games together. Here, Myers is the only guy you really have to use for an extended amount of time. Luis Garcia comes in. Garcia was not great for a guy who's 40 years old. Not maybe all that surprising, but he performed well last year, so I think there was a hope that he would be fine. But this was not necessarily the greatest performance of him. But the fact that you only get 5 from Freddie, but you still only use 2 relievers, so for a team that the whole story last year was their inability to get length from their rotation, hopefully you'll have more better performances than you had in this one in terms of Freddie Peralta's performance. But at least now having a guy like Myers, and then they'll have for now at least Sean Manaea in the bullpen as well. Maybe those are 2 guys who initially can give you 2-3 innings that can help save a lot of the rest of your bullpen. So that was important this one. Francisco Alvarez hit a home run in this one as well. I think he's going to be a crucial part of this season. He also, I think, tends to be a little bit of a forgotten man when we think about potential success for the Mets this year. He's only 24 years old. Like, I know this guy was the #1 prospect in baseball at one point in time. He's battled a ton of injuries. I don't think he's been a bust, but I think it'd be fair to say his career has been a disappointment. Not necessarily because he's been a bad player, but he hasn't quite lived up to expectations, and then he's also been injured, which has also been, I think, one of the main reasons why he has lived up to expectations. Because there have been times where he looks like the former #1 prospect, when you see some of the power. The homer he hit yesterday, I think it's still going. It was a 430-foot bomb he hit to left field. He has that prodigious kind of power. The question for him is, I think, can he stay healthy, which has always been a problem. He remains one of the best defensive catchers. He got the first successful ABS challenge in Major League Baseball history behind the plate, so he deserves a massive shout out for that. He'll always be in history for this season. But good to see Benj and Alvarez homering. The Mets' bottom of the order was also a huge issue last year, so you got bottom of the order guys hitting home runs, everyone in the lineup contributing, and the ability to make pitchers work. How many pitchers did they use yesterday? I know they kind of pulled schemes maybe earlier than they had to, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys pitched for the Pirates yesterday. They didn't throw their 8 guys out there, but still 7 guys pitching. We had multiple guys having long at bats. Bo Bichette had a 13 pitch at bat. Luis Robert had a 10 pitch at bat. Guys are not striking out easily. When they are striking out, they at least making the pitchers work for it. 1 game sample size, obviously, but those are the kind of things the Mets didn't do last year that they're hoping to do this year. 5-12 runners in scoring, 5-15 from runners in scoring position, much better than what we saw last season, again, where they were dreadful runners in scoring position. So 1 game, but still a good sign to see early from the Mets in their first win against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Of course, they'll obviously take the field again today. I'm trying to see who's pitching for the Mets today. I believe it's, I want to say it's David Peterson, I think. Or maybe it's, I don't know when pitch today. Well, it's a 4 p.m. start today. Oh, excuse me, just tomorrow. No game today. They'll play tomorrow. Yeah, David Peterson. David Peterson pitches tomorrow. That'll be a 4 p.m. start. He goes against Mitch Keller, and that'll be a fun one to watch. Keller was a guy I thought the Mets should have looked at this offseason. But they ran back a lot of their rotation. The guy they ended up adding ended up being one Freddie Peralta. So Yankees, again, they win in the first ever Netflix game. They win 7-0. They destroyed the Giants in this one. Max Fried dog walked the Giants lineup for much of this game. He only gave up 2 hits. He pitched 6 1/3. And this looked a lot like how Fried looked most of last season, where at times it just looks easy. It's not easy, obviously, but he makes it look easy. Not a lot of hard hit contact. He had 4 strikeouts, I think, in this one. Again, a really dominant game. Game was broken open in the second inning when the Yankees had a 5-run inning off of Giants ace Logan Webb. Something about these guys that played in WBC, typically those guys come in and start off well. That was not the case for Paul Skeens, not the case for Logan Webb, who got roughed up. He had 5 innings in the second. It was RBI single from new shortstop Jose Caballero, who right now is taking the spot because you got Anthony Volpe, currently on the disabled list, still trying to get healthy from the shoulder injury he suffered last season. It will be very fascinating to see if Caballero can hold on to that spot. Caballero did have an error in this one, but did have the two-run single. The RBI single. Ryan McMahon had a two-run single in that inning. Trent Grisham then had a two-run triple. Excuse me. That's when the game really broke open. So this was a laugher. Yankees looked really dominant. It was not a good game from Aaron Judge. He struck out 3 times. The Giants fans who hoped that he would become a New York Giant were very happy to see him struggle the way he did. It looked kind of like how he looked in the WBC, to be quite honest. Sorry, I said 3. He had the golden sombrero. He had 4 strikeouts in this one. So 4 strikeouts for Judge. I'm not going to go crazy over one game. I don't know why he struck out 4 times. Perhaps he was pressing. Perhaps his, Barry Bonds is in the building, so maybe he's pressing because he got Bonds in the building. I don't know. But it was not a great game from Judge, who maybe you hope to see perform a little better after the subpar performance he had in the WBC final. So Yankees, they move on. They win 7-0. Those 2 teams, again, after one day off, they play today. They'll have, I believe, Cam Schlittler is going to be on the mound. Cam Schlittler, Robbie Ray on the mound, 4:30 Eastern Time, 1:30 Pacific. That should be a good one in San Francisco. I will say one thing real quick about the Netflix broadcast. This was our first broadcast of MLB baseball on Netflix. Mixed bag. I'm being honest. In terms of the viewer experience, I thought that as far as the visual, it looked super clear. Like whatever Apple TV's been doing with their baseball games, it seemed like Netflix is also doing, because the cameras look great. Like the shots look great. The game looked great. I thought the bug was okay. I thought some of the names on the bug were a little small. That was like a small thing for me. But otherwise, I thought the names on the bug were fine. As I feel like I'm playing like a 3 p.m. game in Milwaukee as the shadows come in on these blinds. But no, I thought the actual games, the game itself, when they were doing the game, I thought was okay. My bigger issue, and I'll get up and change the blinds in a second. My bigger issue to me was more, they had too much else around the game. Like, and I don't know what it is with these companies when it comes to this, but they just have to know that if people are turning to Netflix to watch a baseball game, they're coming to watch a baseball game. They're not coming to watch Netflix. And perhaps this is, you want to have your shareholders happy. You want to get people who aren't in the baseball division happy to show that you're getting the return on investment. I don't want to get the number wrong, but I want to say that I heard Netflix spent, I think, $50 million to have this game plus the Home Run Derby and the Field of Dreams game. So that's going to be the package Netflix has this year. It's a lot of money, obviously. So there's a lot of people who have stakes in this, and CEOs who don't know anything about baseball but want to see that Netflix's brand is being represented in a way that is acceptable, I guess. But, I mean, Burt Kreischer and James Winston, way too much of those guys. Burt Kreischer, I'm sorry. I did not mean to pronounce his name wrong. Way too much of those guys. The bits they had didn't quite sit well in terms of working out. I understood having, you got to have somebody out in the McCovey Cove. So I guess I understood the Kreischer and the McCovey Cove aspect of it. But it just seemed like too many bells and whistles and not enough just baseball. Now, part of me says, do I sound like the old fogey who's like, oh, EJ, you gotta understand, it's not just about the game. It's much bigger than that in baseball. Why are you getting on your high horse about baseball? Again, I just go back to, did anything you watch from that game, in terms of the other stuff around it, did it make the presentation in the game more fun or more interesting? I didn't think they really added much. And now the game was terrible, so that doesn't help. You have a game that's essentially decided in the second inning. It's and the Giants are giving no resistance at the plate. It's kind of hard maybe to really make that game interesting. Barry Bonds, I thought, tried to make it interesting when he told the story about how George Steinbrenner once offered him a contract to be the highest paid player in baseball, but that he had to sign it immediately if he wanted to be a Yankee. So because George was impatient, Barry just hung up the phone on him and went back to San Francisco. which is a crazy story. I was trying to figure out what. I don't know if anybody determined what year that was when that happened. I couldn't decide if that was something that happened during his first free agency, or was that later in his career? Like, I think after he hit 73 home runs, I think he was a free agent soon after that. And I remember the Yankees were kind of like flirting with him there. Like, I couldn't figure out when that happened. I was very curious about that. But I'm trying to think, as the first free agency, George might have been banned, so he might not have even been around. But Barry Bonds as a Yankee would have been. I don't think we could have handled it. New York media, we handled a lot. I think if Barry Bonds and everything that comes with him in that era, trying to figure out covering the Barry Bonds steroid era saga of Major League Baseball in Yankee Stadium happening with the New York Yankees, that would have been the biggest story ever. I think it was already a huge story. So it's probably best for baseball, best for everybody that he stuck out in San Francisco. Things would have been a lot more complicated if that was all happening in New York. But yeah, it just felt like, to me, bells and whistles, man. Matthew in the chat said it was too gimmicky. Excuse me, that's the wrong one I have up there. Matthew in chat saying it was too gimmicky for an opening day game. Yeah, I just think that what they have to understand is this is not something people are going to stumble upon. Like, I think, for example, let's do Nickelodeon's NFL games. Like, that is the kind of game that someone may stumble upon. And therefore, I think it's not necessarily about showing so much of the game, but showing off your bells and whistles, because you're just flipping the channels, or maybe your kid's in the background, you give the channel and you watch in the background, wait, is that a football game happening? Why is SpongeBob there? Like, okay, then it draws you in perhaps. And then maybe you tell your next time it comes on, maybe you say, hey, we should watch the next one. Or maybe you tell your babysitter, or maybe you tell your friend who has, the parents of your kid's friends, say, hey, did you know that Nickelodeon did a football game? Like, doing the bells and whistles, something like that works, especially when you got an alternate broadcast that's doing the normal game. Netflix is a streaming platform, which means you're never going to stumble upon it. If you are deciding to turn on Netflix, you're making a decision to turn it on most of the time with the assumption that you're trying to turn to something specific. Do you sometimes turn it on and say, I'm just going to scroll, see what's on? Sure. I'm sure there's some people who do that. I guarantee you Netflix has all of the data with how people search shows and how people their watching tendencies. I guarantee you a large majority of the people who watch Netflix are not people who stumble upon shows just organically, or just stumble upon just scrolling. It's not like TV where you're just going on the guide and just searching for something, right? That's not how this works. If you're going to Netflix to turn on the baseball game, you're going on because you want to watch a baseball game. You're not going on because you want to see Burt Kreischer and Jameis Winston. That's just not why you're turning on the game. Like, you're turning on because I want to see this baseball game. And you're not saying, oh, shoot, Netflix has a game on? Oh, well, let me turn it on and see what's going on. And then you see all the bells and whistles. That's one thing, but that's not your audience. So I think Netflix, sometimes I think you just bite the bullet with some of the stuff. Maybe you just understand, hey, listen, we gotta just live with this. Like, if as a WWE fan who's watched Raw since it's been on Netflix, there's been so much product placement, so much obvious like cross promotion that they have to do, that they have to infuse in the show, that is never gonna be for me, because I'm turning on Raw. I'm not turning on to watch Netflix. I'm turning on to watch CM Punk and Roman Reigns. But again, you gotta please shareholders. You gotta please certain people, and perhaps that's how a broadcast gets, I think, in some ways, maybe a little ahead of its skis for certain things. You missed the first ABS challenge in MLB history. Bad move, bad decision. Missed a couple of first pitches of innings. Not okay. You got Kreischer out in the McCovey Cove, and now I know this because I'm like a TV nerd, but his signal, because he's out in the water, is not great, so you can't even show that many close-ups of him actually in the water. You got to do this weird pan shot. So that doesn't even have the effect that you wanted to have. That should have been actually a pretty good moment for him. It just, Jameis Winston sitting around talking about the wrestlers. You had Jey Uso, and again, cross promotion, right? So you got Jey Uso and Jacob Fatu there. Again, you turn it on to watch a baseball game. think that these things don't do anything for you, and these things end up actually annoying you. And it'd be one thing if you do those things, but you get the first ABS challenge of all time. Like this is a historic moment, and they're talking to. I think they were talking to the Giants manager, which is why they missed it. I forgot. It was some interview they were doing, and I don't know. I don't want to blame Matt Vasgersian because he's awesome. He's actually one of my favorites. I think he's great. But I would have assumed that. I think Matt, I would say, hold on, we got to stop here because there's an ABS challenge and we got to get this on. Like, I don't know why either producers or Matt didn't just jump in there and just cut off the interview, say, hey, I don't care what you're talking about. This has to be broadcast because this is MLB history here. I don't know. It was not great. It was not great. I think this will be a good learning lesson for them. I think this will be much better when they do the home run derby. And in fact, I almost feel like maybe this was like some of the problem is that like the games that they have will end up being gimmicky. Like the Field of Dream game and the home run derby, all this stuff would have been fine. Big promotion, big introductions, comedians and randos talking about the game, enjoying the atmosphere of the game. Like all those things would have been totally fine for a home run derby. Would have been totally fine for a Field of Dream game. Those games, those events are literally gimmicks. Opening day is a very important touchstone for Major League Baseball, but it's not a gimmick. So I think it didn't fit. And then last thing on this, you don't want to turn into the NBA with these late starts too. You're starting at 8 p.m., which annoyed people. I don't know why you couldn't just start at 7, but okay, you start at 8 p.m., primetime window. Want to bring in more people in the West Coast, particularly you have a West Coast team, so I guess I understand that. Game doesn't start till 8:20, 8:22. Like, that's an issue the NBA had, where the game's supposed to start at 7 o'clock, and it's 7:15, and they're just getting into the circle. They're just finally getting into actually tipping the ball off. Like, what was going on? Like, all these introductions, a national anthem, all these bells and whistles. Where's the baseball? Again, people who are going to Netflix, it's a different audience than people who are even watching baseball on television. I think you have, in some ways, you actually have less rope in terms of playing around. Because you can play around a little bit if you're, again, on cable a little bit more, because people may stumble into a game. How many, like, you've done it. I know you've done it, where you stumbled in, you're just flicking the channel, you don't know what's on, like, oh, Brewers Cubs are on Fox. I didn't know they were playing today. I'll turn it on. And okay, you're not like beholden to like, oh, I've been waiting for this all week. Or for some of these baseball fans, Yankees and Giants fans, I'm waiting for this for 4 or 5 months. Like, and you know exactly what channel it is. You're turning on the exact time to get this game going. And it's Bert Kreischer. Or it's dancers coming out of people coming out of a trolley. It's like, where's the baseball? It's 8 o'clock. It's 8:05. It's 8:10. We're not even close to baseball starting yet. Like, what's going on? And that's a problem that the NBA has had. Now, they've had it for games that aren't even opening games. They're just regular. Game 35 of the NBA season, the 8 o'clock start, for some reason, starts at 8:15. You don't know why. So the NBA has a whole lot of different kind of issues. But that part of it that part of it already annoyed me. I'm like, don't become the NBA, man. Like, I think baseball is usually very good with, in fact, like, they'll be very precise when first pitches. They won't even put 1 o'clock. They'll put 1:07, 1:05. Like, they'll even bake in an official time for you so that you know. And I love that as a guy who I feel like my time can't be wasted because I'm watching 7 different sports oftentimes or doing 7 different things. I love that. I say, okay, I know exactly what time. So even I got a little buffer after the top of the hour to turn on to a game. Just bake in, just put in 8:20, but they know they could have done that because people would have revolted. If you were to tell me that the opening game of the season doesn't start till 8:20, people would be like, why is this game starting so late? What are you doing? So they put 8 o'clock as like just to kind of keep everybody off their back, but then the game starts at 8:22, 8:23, I think was the first pitch. That's unacceptable. I know the game's on the West Coast, but 8:23 start for and even with the pitch clock, an East Coast team playing a baseball game is ridiculous. That is unacceptable. Because now you're talking about kids who want to watch their team play, and you have parents had to make decisions whether or not they're going to allow the kids to stay up close to 11 o'clock on a school night. Like, Again, baseball, opening day is the one thing that has a 100% approval rating amongst all baseball fans. I'm not saying things gotta stay exactly how they always have to be, because there is a search for money and it's a capitalist world. I get all that. But there just seems to be some things that are layups that they seem to screw up with opening day recently. And I don't know. The slate yesterday was weird. The opening day night game was weird. These are things that shouldn't be weird. These should be very simple things. And for some reason, it wasn't. So that was the one thing that was frustrating and annoying. But it's still fun to watch the Yankees play. Fun to have baseball back. With baseball, I'll say this before I get out of here. I mean, not get out of here, but get out of this topic and continue the show. Despite all of my complaints there, I will say that baseball returning and then having the March Madness games last night, I will say this till the cows come home. I believe spring is the best time in the sports calendar. And I'm saying it 10 toes down. Because I know folks will say, oh, fall, football. And I love football. And I think people who have listened to this show or watched this show or watched me on Maggie Perloff or who've listened to me on WFAN or who've watched my content for 10 years on New Generation Media, New Generation Podcast Network, or hell, who went all the way back to my college radio days at WHCS, Hunter College Radio, knows how much I love football. But to me, if you're talking about the variety of sports happening, the volume of sports happening on a night-to-night basis, I will take spring over fall any day of the week. You got March Madness. You got opening day, now Major League Baseball in full swing. You will soon have the NBA playoffs. You will soon have the NHL playoffs, which to a lot of people is arguably the most competitive playoffs we have in all North American sports. We have the Masters. We have the NFL Draft. The Kentucky Derby is in May, if you want to even push it to May as a start of spring. But maybe that's a little late. But if you don't even want to give me the Kentucky Derby, look at the volume of awesome sporting events we happen. It feels like we have happening every week. One of these events is happening. And like, I love football, and I love the start of football, and it's really exciting and awesome and all those different things. But you just don't have that volume in the fall. In the fall, September comes around, it's NFL, college football, which is great. By October, you get to the MLB playoffs, which is fun too. But at some ways, because the NFL has become so big, not necessarily for me, but for a lot of folks, it feels like the NFL ends up sucking up the oxygen of even the Major League Baseball playoffs, as awesome as the baseball playoffs are. And like, to me, it ends up becoming a one sport time of the year. NBA start of the season has become so watered down now because it's so early. And maybe the first game you're kind of excited about, but you kind of move on fast. This part of the year, NBA games are lit. NHL games are lit. Baseball just got started. Opening day is a national holiday, essentially. You have March Madness going on. You have the Final Four next week. Hell, if you want to throw in a know it's sports entertainment, WrestleMania coming up in a couple of weeks. And I know maybe I'm biased. I'm a Taurus baby. I'm born April 21st. So maybe I'm biased because it's also around my birthday. But I look at this time of the year, I'm like, there's no better time of the year, to me, in my opinion, sports calendar than this time around spring. That mid-March to late April time, I will take over any time of any other sports calendar. And I will say that to the cows come home. I'll say that to the day I die. I love this part of the year. And I'm excited to be doing this show now, being back. Because I'll be real, I went away, I feel like at the time that was kind of the dead part of the sports calendar. NFL offseason kind of ended. The biggest thing we had was Bam Adebayo scoring 83 points and people going crazy about it, which would have been fun to talk about, by the way. I was thinking about some of the things. I'm like, man, what are the stories that I missed that I would have loved to discuss? Like, I would have loved to discuss the Max Crosby trade that we talked about, the trade that happened, but then we need to talk about the trade that didn't happen because it got nixed. Some of the other offseason moves ended up happening after that. Bam Adebayo scored 83 points and people just losing their minds over it would have been fun to talk about too. So a lot of stories we end up missing in those like 2 weeks of down period from the 40 days saga. But we're in our 40 days era, and this is 40 days and counting because we finished 40 days and 40 nights. So now we're doing just I'm not even counting these episodes. I was on the fence. I was like, should I keep counting these episodes moving forward? But I was like, no, that saga, that era should all be wrapped up in one neat bow. And we keep the legacy of that with this name of this new show. That's the same show. But I'm not gonna name the episodes the way I did before. I'm like, just keep it going. Maybe we'll number them 1, 2, 3. I'm still trying to think about that, but I was wondering if should this be night 41, or day 41 rather, as opposed to the other episode would have been night 41. It's like, no, because it's not part of the stretch. But this has been fun though, man. I'm so happy to be doing this show. So happy to be back. Wish I was healthier. Wish I wasn't dealing with this cold while I was doing it, but. This is also that time of the year where your allergies and your colds come up. Again, I wish there was a way I put up a poll. Do you think I have a cold or do you think I have allergies? Which one? I'm definitely gonna, as soon as I leave here, I'm gonna get some Claritin D and take some Dayquil and to figure out. It's gotta be one of the two. That's for damn sure. I do want to continue on and talk about some stuff. Speaking of the NBA, an interesting story here. This was from Adam Silver, who had a press conference on Wednesday. He met with the Board of Governors on Wednesday and then had a press conference shortly after that, and he spoke about what has become a big topic in the NBA, which is the 65 game rule and now new opposition to it. And a lot of it started with the frustration with what happened with Kate Cunningham. So if you are not paying attention, the NBA they have a eligibility rule where if you want to qualify for all NBA teams or any of the player NBA regular season awards, you have to have played at least 65 games. There are some exemptions, but not many. Kate Cunningham, who has led the Detroit Pistons to the best record in the Eastern Conference, a record they will almost certainly, I don't think they've clinched it yet, but they are almost certain to be the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And Kate's had a phenomenal season. He's been an MVP candidate for them. Right now, they're 4.5 out of they're 4.5 games up in terms of having the #1 seed. The Celtics are 4.5 back of them. It take a kind of a crazy collapse for the Pistons to figure out a way to lose the #1 seed, but I guess it's not implausible at this point. But Kate Cunningham's been hurt, and he hasn't been playing for a lot of this time because he suffered a collapsed lung a couple of weeks ago. And right now, he's currently sitting at 61 games. So a lot of players, some media members, a lot of people have been sitting around saying, wait a minute, Kate Cunningham's had this phenomenal season. He's been an MVP candidate. He's led the Pistons to the best record in the Eastern Conference. How would it be fair that this player who's having this awesome season is not going to be eligible for any of these awards? And some people are saying that this is a bad move by the NBA and they should fix it. And that we've now seen for several reasons, but one being this situation where a star player who absolutely is worthy of being a guy who gets the recognition of all NBA is not going to get it. Plus, what we've seen with these rafts of injuries and perhaps guys trying to play through injuries and then getting hurt. We had all the Achilles injuries that happened last season in the playoffs, that maybe this is a bad idea by the NBA to have this rule in place, incentivizing guys to play just to get to the 65-game rule. So here's Adam Silver, his response on Wednesday, where he rejected this notion. So he said here, quote, "We always knew when there's a line drawn that somebody's going to fall on the other side of that line," he said Wednesday at a press conference. Excuse me, I just lower this here. He said Wednesday, and it may feel unfair in that particular instance. Let's see what happens at the end of the year. By the way, Kate Cunningham is an incredible player. I'm sorry that he's injured, and I can't wait to see him back on the floor. But we also have to remember that to the extent that one player is no longer eligible, some other player then will be all NBA and will slot into that spot. So I'm not going to stand here and say I don't think it's working. I think it is working. I'll be honest, I'm a little... Well, I don't want to say I'm not surprised. Because I'm not saying that I'm surprised. I'm not surprised. Because I think we got to be real with ourselves. And I'm not going to say the NBA doesn't have its faults. I feel like I'm very fair. I don't know if I sound like I'm playing both sides of the fence. I promise not to. I always try to just present things as I always say, EJ keeps everything 100, right? So I just tell you how I feel about certain things. So I will defend the NBA where I feel like it needs to be defended. I will criticize the NBA where I feel it needs to be criticized. This feels like a spot where I want to defend the NBA a little bit, and this feels like a spot where I think we as NBA observers need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what do we really want? Because we sound like the whiniest observers of a professional league that we have in North America. And I just finished complaining about Major League Baseball. But I think the NBA and its fans and its media members as a whole, at least the ones that seem to have the biggest microphones and the ones that seem to be pushing all the narratives of complaining, they are the biggest complainers we have in North America. Because we came out of a stretch. In fact, we're not even out of it. People are still upset about load management and tanking. So much so that we're going to have to upend how we do draft lotteries. And yet, now you have those same people who are upset about load management and upset about tanking, who are now saying, well, wait a minute, this rule against load management needs to be retracted. What do you people want? Someone tell me, please. If we get a clear answer or something, like, I would be fine. But like, this feels one of those things where, and I say this at a time where it feels like the NBA can't win, because we had people complaining guys shouldn't be able to load manage their way to an MVP. You know, Joel Embiid was missing games left and right and saying that he should still be the MVP. And it was like, how can a guy play 50 games and be an MVP candidate? That's ridiculous. And it was true. It was a fair assessment. It was a fair thing. And beyond that, beyond just Joel Embiid, because it wasn't just him. It was the other guys who were just missing games willy-nilly for no reason. Games that are on national TV. Games that are high-profile games. Teams were sitting these guys out because they wanted to keep these guys fresh. And we lost out on what should have been really good regular season matchups, marquee matchups. And people said, this is unacceptable. So the NBA says, okay, if those guys want to be rewarded as all NBA players, availability is ability. So that should be a part of the criteria. So let's put in the 65-game rule, where no player that doesn't play at least 65 games makes it to an all-NBA team or can win an award. Which makes sense in theory, to me, yeah, if guys are going to load manage and the voters are too stupid not to acknowledge load management versus guys who are playing almost every night, then take it out of their hands. People seem to champion it at the time. Now, because one guy, Kay Cunningham, who we know is not load managing, but he did get hurt. It's a freak. I don't know if I want to call it an injury. It's almost like an ailment. But a freak ailment / injury happens to him. It's terrible. I'm hoping he comes back. I don't want to see him hurt. You know, I'm a Knicks fan. I root for the Eastern Conference, obviously. I root, for the Knicks to get out of the Eastern Conference, but I want to see Knicks beat the Pistons at full strength. I don't want to see them win on an asterisk or anything like that. So, I hope he comes back healthy. I hope that this doesn't end up plaguing him as we get through the playoffs if he does return. But one guy misses the threshold by a short thing, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, we got to throw the rule out. What do you want? Are you okay with load management? Are you okay with guys being eligible for awards even if they don't play a certain amount of games? Or do you want to have players incentivized to play? Because that is what this is. This is an incentive to get your star players to play as many games as possible. Because, again, we're not talking about the Grant Williamses and the, Sadiq Bays of the world that we're talking about for these awards. Those guys don't move the needle. Those guys low manage or miss 50 games. We don't care. No offense to those guys. Those guys and those teams are useful. But as an NBA overall landscape, they're irrelevant. We care about Kay Cunningham and Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic and Wemby and Cooper Flag. Those are the guys we care about, right? Do you want to see those guys play or not? Are you okay with those guys low managing or not? Because you take this rule away, those guys are going to start being low managed again. And then we're going to have a complaint, oh, you're low managing too much. Again, what do you want? To me, this rule probably probably should not have been put in place simply because they should have had. We should have had voters that were smart enough to like be able to discern if a guy has played enough games to qualify as All NBA. Like Kate Cunningham is obviously an All NBA player. I don't think anybody will argue that. He's gonna end up missing. If he doesn't play again, that would be what 21 games. It's a lot of games, but I don't think it's enough where it's like okay, he has to be disqualified from certain awards. Like he would have played to me plenty of enough games to, in my opinion, if I was a voter, to vote him for All NBA. Maybe I throw him out of the MVP. Like just the idea is like he hasn't played in the home stretch of the season, so he would have no shot at that. But in theory, like yes, the voters should have had the discernment to understand. Okay, like this guy played 75 games, didn't miss any games except for a couple of games with a sprained ankle or whatever, and he's been healthy. He's played well, and I'm comparing him to a guy who's been missing for 30 games. I would think that if you trust your media to give out All NBA awards that actually result in pay bonuses and actual super max contracts for NBA players, you would have the wherewithal to trust them to understand whether or not a guy has played enough games where he should be eligible for an award. But you people wanted blood. You people wanted something to make these lazy NBA guys, these soft NBA guys, make sure these guys play. And you wanted your flesh, your pound of flesh. Well, now you have it. And because it's Cade Cunningham, who I think we all like because he's quote unquote an ethical hooper. He's not someone who low manages. He's not someone who, foul baits allegedly. Like, these are all the things people love about this guy. Because it's one of your faves, they're like, whoa, I don't want Cade Cunningham to be punished. I wanted Joel Embiid to be punished. I wanted LeBron James to be punished. I wanted, Kawhi Leonard to be punished. I didn't want, I wanted those guys to feel like they have to play and not, take games off and take weeks off of the season. I didn't want a young up-and-coming star to be held accountable. Well, what did you expect? This is part of the sport. Injuries happen. Freak things happen. If you were so hell-bent on making sure that you wanted those guys who you had problems with load management, where they were missing all these games and not being eligible and not presenting themselves on national TV stages, then you should have been fine to live with whatever the results were going to be. And this was going to happen. So I don't know. I agree with Silver. I think the rule is working. Like, yeah, I think that there are plenty of games where guys typically would not have played that are trying to at least make sure they get to 65 games. Like, I was talking about a couple of days ago, like, because of, like, where the injuries happened this year, like, Jokic and Shea do not have a lot of games to spare in terms of how many games they can miss anymore. Basically, you can't miss more than 21 games. That's simple. Or not 21, less than that. 17 games. Miss 17 games, more than 17 games, you're done. And both of those guys have had injuries. They've had real injuries. So they were out. Like, Jokic hurt his knee. He was carried off the court in Miami earlier this season. And he has no wiggle room. So he's just playing. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, what do you have, a groin or ab injury? I forgot what he had. But, like, he's staying on skin ice. If he wants to be an MVP this year, he's got to play every game, basically. Again, I thought this is what you guys wanted. I don't know what it is you guys want. I guarantee you, if those guys were not trying to fight for awards, like Shea, he would have been sat out some of these games. No, he wants to be an MVP. He wants to be a back-to-back MVP. He wants to be All-NBA. All these things mean more money for him. Don't you like that you're getting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander sprinting through the end of the season? I thought that's what you wanted. Do you not want it, or do you? You gotta stop being so whiny, man. I'm so sick of some of these people when it comes to the NBA, and just again, it just feels like you guys want to complain for the sake of complaining, because this was inevitable. Somebody was gonna get hurt that was on the threshold, and just the nature of an NBA season where you just get hurt because the season goes how it goes, and bad things happen to people, and unfortunately you miss out. Like Wemby would have been a lock for Defensive Player of the Year last year, and he gets blood clots. In my opinion, he still probably could have won the award if you really were being honest. If we didn't have this rule in, I think there's a good chance he may have just won it anyway, because he was so much better defensively than everybody else. But we put this rule in, and like, I'll be honest, I'm okay with it. Like, I think that if you're gonna be the MVP of the league or the defensive player of the league, like, I don't know about six man, maybe that's one I wouldn't care about so much, but like some of these awards are big awards. All NBA is a huge award. I think you should play most of the games. I think that I would have thought that would have been obvious, but apparently, again, because guys were messing around with, and I say it was players, but a lot of this stuff is on teams. You know, take out LeBron, take out Kawhi Leonard, take out Joel Embiid. Those guys are the three guys I think you look at as the face of load management. And totally would agree, yep, those guys just don't want to play. Those guys are just like, you know, whatever. Totally agree with that. Everyone else, when they get days to sit or whatever, they're not coming and say, I want an off day. They want to go out. They want to play. This is all on the NBA teams. But now, because of this rule, these guys are having more pushback. When the NBA team says, hey, I want to sit you down, they say, wait, I got to get to 65 games. Like, don't have me messing out on some money because you're trying to rush me up for the playoffs. So it puts a little more pressure on these teams because the players who want to get to that 65 game threshold are going to push to play more so than they would in a typical regular season, which I thought is what we wanted. I thought it was what we wanted, but apparently now it's not, because Kate Cunningham may not get an award that people feel like he's deserving of, and I feel terrible for Cade. I think that he deserves to be an All-NBA player, but to do this for one guy and pull the shoot this early is ridiculous. But the NBA PA is calling for the rule to be abolished or reformed. According to The Athletic, the union is working on a proposal to change the rule, which would focus on load management and incorporate provisions for injuries. The union wants to reevaluate the number of games played and intends to present the proposal to the league in the next few weeks. I think it's possible they may lower the threshold. Again, like, where do you want to go? You want to go to 60? Like, he played 61. Like, I don't... If he would have missed 2 more games, he would have still missed. You guys would still have been complaining, I feel like. I don't know if there's a perfect number for this. 55? Like, okay, then you're going to give a lot more leeway to what you were complaining about, which was load management. And again, I go back to this real quickly, man. Like, this idea of trying to solve this silver bullet of load management, which you guys think is bogus, which I keep trying to tell you is not. No matter how many times I tell you, no one listens. But there are guys who are actually injured who can't go or shouldn't play in regular season games that at the end of the day are meaningless. And I know you will say, well, EJ, why, when I grew up watching basketball in the 80s and 90s, did I see Michael Jordan playing 82 games, Karl Malone playing 81 games, and Patrick Ewing playing 81 games, 82 games? They showed a video. I don't think I got to do this, because I think this was after 48 to 49 nights, but someone posted a video from the cinematic presentation of the Game 6 of the 1998 NBA Finals between the Bulls and the Utah Jazz. Now, this was, I think, put out in IMAX, if I remember correctly, because I think my dad took me. I'm like 75% sure I saw this in IMAX. This was like a movie. You could actually watch the movie of this game. And like a crazy, that shows how much we were in the Michael Jordan era. Like, you made a movie about a basketball game that aired 5 months prior. Anyway, but it showed the game in like a different dynamic, a different way of showing the game. And they showed the first 3 minutes of this game. Now, I will sit here and tell you, listen, back in the day, the NBA was very physical. You went into the paint. You might not come back with your head, like, against certain teams. Like, it was, I know what the game day was like, because I was a kid, but I do remember a lot of aspects of it. But I always try to tell folks that the way the NBA is played now is way more dangerous than it was back in the day. And I know you people think I'm going crazy. Like, are you insane? Do you know what it was like playing against Charles Oakley and Anthony Mason and the Bad Boy Pistons and some of these rough and tumble guys playing in Xavier McDaniel, whether he was on the Sonics or he was on the Knicks? And I'm like, forget about the fights, which fighting is dangerous, obviously. And okay, forget about the flagrant fouls that would happen every now and then. You know, Mikal getting clotheslining Rambis and Kareem, Robert Parrish punching Bill Laimbeer, like these things that happen on the court. Like, forget about those. I'm talking about just like the actual basketball that we played. It is so slow there is so less movement, so less of bodies colliding high impact up into the paint because guys aren't playing, nearly many guys aren't playing above the rim. And you watch this 1998 basketball game, which is kind of the conclusion of the golden era of the NBA, in I think most people's opinion, 80s and 90s. I mean, it is the lowest risk version of how to play a basketball game that you would ever see if they tried to play today. Like, I know people have this vision of what the NBA was back then, and it clouds your vision because the deeper you get away from it. And I already knew this because I actually watched that game. Oh, not that game, but I like, during the summer, I do assignments of myself where I'm like, I'm just going to go watch like an old NBA game. I do this, I'm a lunatic. I was say, shout out to the NBA app. It's not the greatest app, but I do like the fact that you can watch a lot of old games on it. So this past summer, I was like, I'm just going to watch, I watched the flu game. I'm just going to watch the flu game. I'm just going to watch game 1 of, the 96 finals between the Seattle Sonics and the Bulls. I'm just going to watch it. It's something on in the background. I just want to see how basketball was being played back then to get a feel for it. And I watched both of those games. So I saw this. I was like, I mean, there's so much mid-range jump shooting. There's so much stagnant movement. There's just not as many bodies colliding and speed and pace. And when I say dangerous, sports more dangerous now, the amount of jumping and running and cutting that is done now is so much more intense than it was back then. The game was just more stagnant. It was a station-to-station game. It was almost like baseball. When we talk about baseball, teams that are bad, they're playing station to station. They're not running the base paths. They're not creating havoc on the base paths. That's what the NBA basketball was at that point. It was station to station. I'm watching them throw the ball in the post. Luke Longley stands there, and Ron Harper's going under every screen because John Stockton's not even thinking about shooting the ball if he goes under a screen. And not that John Stockton can't shoot. It's just they weren't taking threes like that. So he's not taking contact in pick and roll action. Then Malone's getting it, picking pops, and he's wide open, and they're playing off of him because they're going to play for the jump shot because they don't think anybody can shoot back then. I'm watching this game, and you watch the cinematic video, and you're like, yo, you cannot tell me that this game that you're talking about, that's not easy to play 82 games in a season. I'm sorry. It's much easier to play that version of basketball with 82 games with the hand checking, with the flagrant fouls. It's still easier to get through 82 games of that than 82 games of any NBA game you see being played today. I want to give a shout out and a much love to Moses Moody, who tore his patellar tendon. That's an injury, obviously, I'm very familiar with, the same injury I had last year. And he tore his patellar tendon. He's going to be out, obviously, for basically a whole year. It was a gruesome injury. And this was him, a non-contact. He just explodes trying to jump for a dunk, and he blows out his knee. It's terrible, and he gets carted off. And I really am feeling for him. I root for all guys for knee injuries now, but particularly the patellar tendon guys. I'm rooting so hard for Moses Moody to come back strong because it's a tough injury, and a lot of guys don't come back from it. They never are the same. It's one of the few injuries I don't think we've really quite solved. Shout out to Nakobe Dean of the Eagles. I mean, he's going to be one of the poster children, I think, of returns of patellar tendons because he was awesome last year for the Eagles coming back from that injury. But a lot of guys have not. I'm watching, him go out and his knee just blows out, gives out on him completely. And you're thinking, man, we have a lot of these non-contact injuries that are happening so much more often. Why is that? I'm like, do you watch what these guys are doing on a regular basis? Do you watch, again, the jumping, the acrobatics? The reason why Michael Jordan jumping in the air and flipping hands the way he did was so incredible was because, nobody was even thinking about doing stuff like that back in the day. Michael and some of these crazy up and under layups that he was doing, and it's not like people are doing it exactly like he's doing it because nobody's like Mike. But you see those kind of plays almost every day in the NBA now because guys, they imitate what they've seen and they add these things to their games. And to me, it's almost like just watching these guys in baseball who hit all these home runs now. And they're going for launch angles. They're just, they know more about what it takes to be a power hitter now than they did in 1985, which is why you have more power hitters, more home run hitters now than you had in 1985. The game is different. There's a give and take that comes with that. You don't have as many guys that hit for high average, but you have guys that hit more home runs. So there's give and take what comes with the NBA, but the give and take to me is like, oh yeah, that playing that style, 82 games is easy. Don't get clothesline, don't get in the fight. But if you find a way to kind of just like, I don't gotta run through screens all day. I don't have to I can throw the ball and just stand in the corner. I don't gotta do any cutting. I don't gotta move. Like the amount of the point guards and so much of the 92 feet those guys have to play now. So many more teams are pressing. There are a lot of teams that press, which is something we've seen often with the Pacers. Some of these teams that have been in the NBA Finals of late, they've added that to their repertoire. The Miami Heat, teams that are putting on full court presses in the NBA. This is unheard of. 1998, nobody's playing like that. So like I just it doesn't make for good. Maybe it doesn't make for good TV. Maybe it doesn't make for a good podcast. Maybe it doesn't make for a good radio show. And this is where I get into my bag of like giving you guys a little bit of that like behind the scenes of how we do this. But I just think the conversation about NBA load management and guys not playing enough games, it's just so surface level and so what's the word I'm looking for? It's just the surface level is the best way I can put it. It's just surface level. It's not. It doesn't even scratch the surface of what the issue is, which is the pace of the game and the style of play. It's just not conducive for 82 games. It just isn't. We can decide whatever we want to do with that. Do you want to? Some people are very much against limiting the 82 game schedule, turning it down to 72 or whatever. I don't necessarily want to see 82 games goes away. I think that I think precedence is important when it comes to comparing eras, and the NBA, more than almost any sport, compares eras, and we do it on averages, which also is different than most sports that do totals. Hockey does totals, baseball does totals, except for batting average. Everything else is total. Home runs, RBI, strikeouts, innings pitched, all those. Only batting average and ERA are the only like averages really we do, besides the sabermetric numbers. All the other stat play in North American sports are counting stats. NBA is the only sport where counting stats mean nothing. We never care who scored the most points at the end of the NBA season. That's never a stat. We never care who had the most assists. We never care who had the most blocks. We do it all on averages. Which is why the 82 game schedule, why there's a hold to it, also is kind of weird, because it's not like we're counting up the numbers every year. But whatever. There is no other sport that does averages in this way, except for the NBA, where almost all your stats that matter are averages, not totals. So there has to be a real conversation about what we're going to do, what we're going to decide with the load management. Do we care enough to where we're going to throw away this rule? Do we care enough to where we're willing to limit the games so maybe guys can play more? We get less back-to-backs. We give guys way more rest. Those are things that we got to figure out and decide. I think, to me, the NBA schedule, I'm not for limiting it, but I also think it could be a benefit to the NBA schedule to maybe make it a little more scarce that an NBA game is happening. Like, I know it's maybe to flood the market with NBA games early in fall may sound like a good idea, but with the NFL taking over, it seems like every day of the week now, there are way more Thursday games. They're throwing in Friday games. There have been Saturday games once the college football season ends. Like, there's so much stuff around how much the NFL is willing to go the edge. Of course, there's Monday night games. How much they're willing to push it in terms of playing more games during the week, and how you're always going to lose to them anytime they're up on the TV slate. It may make more sense to pare down your schedule and pick your spots better, especially during the fall of when you're actually playing. You're also competing against the Major League Baseball playoffs. So I see the benefits to a lesser season. But I've told you guys before, I have a grand scheme. One day I'm going to really like sit down and lay it out. But my grand scheme of the 82 game conundrum, because it is a conundrum, because we're going to complain about guys low managing, but then we're going to have guys blowing their Achilles out in NBA Finals games and say, oh, what happened? How did that happen? I'm like, do you watch how the Pacers play? And I'm not even blaming Rick Carlisle or blaming the Pacers there's no blame here. It's just the nature of the sport now. Do you watch how the Pacers play? Do you see how much is even though Tyrese Halliburton's minutes are very, and they try to they've always tried to be mindful of it because they ask him to do so much. They're very under control. This is not a guy who plays 38 minutes a night. But do you see what they ask him to do? How much running they're doing? How much up and down there is? How he's running constantly all over the court, dribbling all over the court. They're asking him to do so much because it's their only chance they have to win is to play that frantic kind of style of play. To win a championship, of course. Like, you don't think that that's wear and tear on the body? You think for him to play that way for 82 games is sustainable? It's only a matter of time for a guy that gets hurt. It's only a matter of time for a guy, Jason Tatum, who does all the stuff he does off the ball, plays defense at a super high level, and is not a guy who low manages, who plays his fair share of minutes. You don't think those guys are just waiting to get injured at a certain point, given the style of play? Again, put them in 1998 and let them run the triangle offense. Those guys never get hurt. You can't get hurt playing that way. You know, it's so stationary. It's so... It's slower. It's slower. It's less athletic, and it's why I think someone like Michael Jordan popped off the screen because it was like, whoa, that guy is doing things that no one else is even trying to do. And there are a few other guys who are great athletes: Clyde Drexler, Dominique Wilkins. Obviously, Kobe came into the league, right? There a lot of guys, of course. Sean Kemp. We know guys, but I think those guys pop off the screen because those guys were making plays that felt like, oh my God, like that's a once in a 2-3 month kind of play you would see. We're seeing these same kind of plays happening every night because teams are telling people that, like, we always talk about, 3-ball. The other aspect of the 3-ball is teams are also saying paint touch. Is they don't want you taking mid-range jump shot. They want you attacking the rim. If you're not taking the three, you need to be shooting at the basket. You know what that means? More on open air collisions. You know what that means? More jumping. You know what that means? More injuries, more wear and tear because guys are playing and colliding and jumping high, meeting at the summit at the basket. That's way more than they were happening back then. Again, go turn on and watch a game. Guys were afraid to go into the paint back then because, again, you might get clotheslined. So it ends up becoming a mid-range jump shooting kind of game at a time where people didn't even shoot the ball that well. And this is not me dissing that era of basketball. I defend that era of basketball 100 times out of 100 times on most situations. It's not about dissing it. It's about trying to get people to wake up about what we're actually talking about if we want to talk about 65-game eligibility rules and load management and whether or not an 82-game season is actually sufficient at this point. We need to come to terms with basketball is just way more dangerous than it was in 1998. And whether or not we're okay with them playing this way for 82 games. And knowing that with that may have to come either load management or us living with more injuries. Decide what you guys want. But you can't have it all and then say, I wish it was like how it was in 1998. It's never going to go back to that. And I don't think you wanted to go back to that. Because I don't think, if you watch that game, you turned on that game, I don't think you look at this and say, oh, this is great basketball. I'm sorry. There's no way. No way. So I don't know, man. Like, it's just something that I always feel strongly about. And again, I know I think I just made good content. Not that I'm sitting there saying I'm making good content. But I thought this was good content. But I know a lot of folks, like, it's much easier to be like, oh, those lazy NBA players, oh, they don't want to play. Or it's easy to say, oh, well, all you people are just, getting after these NBA guys because you have a bias or whatever. It's easy to do those things. And I'm not saying that there aren't elements of those things at play. But there are larger conversations that we should have that if we actually want to solve these issues and actually get to any kind of conclusion, we should have them. And we shouldn't be for the sake of a hot take or for the sake of making something palatable for radio or palatable for YouTube or palatable for television. Like, avoiding it. Or lying to our audience and saying that, oh, well, like, those guys in 1994 played all 82 games and didn't complain. Why should these guys be complaining? It's like, go turn on the game in 1994 and tell me that this is the same basketball. It's not. It's just not. More stuff before we get out of here, man. I want to say something on this real quick. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I know I've run long. I always think, oh, man, I wonder how long I'm going to go. and I'm going way longer than I expected. It's like two more. I have like technically three more topics, and we're an hour and 50 minutes. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of this wonderful, wonderful show, 40 Days and Counting. New show I'm doing. We're streaming live twice a week, Tuesdays 6 p.m., Fridays 8 a.m. Well past the 10 o'clock local hour here. I just really quickly want to mention this Will Wade thing. So Will Wade, he was the former coach at LSU. He got caught up in the FBI scandal that ended up kind of being a nothing burger. Like, there are some people that went to jail. There are some people that are kind of pseudo banned from college basketball in this pay-for-play scheme that involved Andy Miller's agency, Adidas, and certain schools. It wasn't all Adidas. Like, LSU was not an Adidas school. LSU was a Nike school. But certain coaches and their dealings with agents and money being exchanged in exchange for bringing guys onto campus to play. And LSU was one of the main schools that was caught up in this scandal. Will Wade was their head coach. He was a kind of a hot young coach, kind of right on the cusp. Came on. LSU kind of won immediately when he got there. Turned out, not that other teams weren't paying players, but they were giving out a lot of bags. It seemed like at LSU, at least that's what it seemed. Is what the FBI thought they found. So again, some people have gone to jail, some people went to prison. Ironically, none of the actual coaches, head coaches, had any real ramifications happen to them. Sean Miller's, Rick Pitino, in terms of jail time or anything like that. All those guys had ended up being fired for one reason or another. Miller, I think, more because they started losing. Wade, more related to the scandal, but also they started losing. Rick Pitino, it was do you have an hour? I can tell you an hour about why Rick Pitino was fired in Louisville. So a lot happened, but those were kind of the three schools really wrapped in it. So Wade kind of was fired unceremoniously from LSU, had to go down to McNeese, formerly McNeese State, now just McNeese, I believe. And he did a great job there. Got them to be one of the top mid-majors in the country. And 2 years, one NCAA tournament win, he gets a job at NC State. So Will Wade, a guy who was disgraced in college basketball, coaching at McNeese State, after the NIL era comes in and players are allowed to be paid, now he's right back into the game, and now he's coaching at NC State. Not one of the preeminent college basketball programs, but a program with history, a national championship thanks to the great Jim Valvano, and I don't want to say redemption, but a comeback story for sure for Will Wade. And that all ended in 1 year. In 1 year, he decided LSU fires their coach, and LSU, who fired him, in part because of the lack of institutional control over the program and losing and all the hot water that he put themselves in. Now he is going back to LSU to coach the Tigers, who I assume, after with the money they gave Lane Kiffin, I'm sure there's a lot of money going around, offered them a huge NIL package, offered them a huge raise to bring back their basketball program that essentially went dormant as soon as he left. LSU has been a nothing burger in the SEC, in a conference that is stacked with basketball talent. So this will be Will Wade returning to LSU. I saw Boo Corrigan, the AD of NC State, did not have many kind words for Will Wade. He quoted Phil Rivers saying that, you got to be tough. Only tough people can survive at NC State, and basically allude to the fact that Will Wade is not tough, I guess is his point. He also made the case that he definitely feels like Wade lied to him, lied to the administration, lied to the community, because he was asked last week about do you have any interest in this looming LSU job? He gave this extremely condescending answer where he was like, well, is that job open yet? When we knew the coach there was going to be fired for sure. And also, basically, the courtship of of Will Wade happened prior to Matt McMahon, their current coach, being fired. So it was like, the fact he's saying, is their coach fired yet, when that had nothing to do with LSU pursuing him already, was silly to begin with. But Will Wade, who's really now starting to get this reputation as being someone who, not my words, but I think the words of a lot of people who are involved with this, one of the unscrupulous characters of college basketball, because of the recruiting scandals at LSU that destroyed the program, because of some of the ways he's clearly been dishonest about whether it came to that scandal with paying players, whether it came to coaching games instead of taking suspensions. Like he is really flown in the face of rules and flown in the face of a lot of what I don't want to say what we feel is sacred to college basketball, because nothing is sacred in college sports, in college basketball or college football. But he has been one of the guys that has really been like, I will fly in the face of whatever you think is decent, quote unquote, in order to continue to be a highly successful, highly paid coach. So him being the guy to go to a school that, basically took him off the scrap heap. This guy was coaching at McNeese and gave him an opportunity to then say, sayonara, 1 year, I'm going to the next place, feels very in line with who Will Wade has been as a public figure. Don't know who he is privately. Could be an awesome man privately, but he did leave the NC State community high and dry. He did leave his players high and dry. But I only bring this story up just because I do think it's a reminder that when we complain, and you hear coaches complain about NIL and transfer portal and lack of loyalty and lack of commitment and lack of honesty, these are the clowns that are pushing these narratives. These college head coaches who will drop you like a bad habit the second a better opportunity comes up. A lot of them. Will Wade, you know how many promises this man probably made to the players that he plays, that he coaches, to the people on his staff who he hired, who believed that this was going to be at least some kind of extended stay for Will Wade. I have nobody's stupid. Everybody understands that college basketball is transactional, but promises he made to the staff that now he has to tell, hey, like, just like Lane Kiffin with Ole Miss, like, hey, if you want to have a job, get on that plane with me to Baton Rouge, because that's where we're going, who have to upend their families. And these are the same cast of characters who will sit around and talk about these players, and they lack commitment, they lack loyalty, they lack honesty in how they deal with opportunities that get presented to them because they have the opportunity to make more money or be more prosperous. When head coaches will, at the drop of a dime, screw these players over, screw their staffs over, screw communities over for themselves. And it's why when we have these conversations about portal, NIL, and people complaining about, players being poached and recruited while, games are happening or while seasons are going on. Meanwhile, you got a head coach of NC State who's coaching in the NCAA tournament, being recruited by a school who had not fired their coach yet. Come on, think about all the sanctimonious crap that comes with that stuff. That's why you never hear me say that. Whenever I talk about reform for NIL and reform for transfer portal, first of all, it rarely talks about actual reform for NIL. I don't really have much of a problem with NIL. My problem is more transfer portal, and in terms of, I think that there does need to be some limitation for just, I think, the betterment of the sport and the betterment of actual programs for them to be, to thrive, for there to be some restrictions on transferring that has become now completely open season. But I also think there needs to be restrictions for coaches now. And I think that if there ever becomes a situation where there is a situation with a collective bargaining agreement that gets eventually agreed to, I think we're going to get there at some point. They're trying to hold on for dear life. I don't think they can hold on forever. If you're a coach, it should be just like the NFL or just like the NBA or just like Major League Baseball. If you have a job, you can't simply just decide, oh, I'm just leaving my contract here to go coach somewhere else. That can't be allowed anymore. If we're gonna do the thing I'm talking about, where we're talking about limiting transfers, which I'm totally okay with, it's similar to our conversation with salary caps in baseball, where you want to put a salary cap, but we have no idea if these other owners are actually going to spend. I'm like, well, that salary floor better be high if we're going to talk about putting a salary cap, because this is ridiculous that you have teams like, the Pirates spent a little bit of money this year, I think because they know a salary floor is coming. But, teams like the Guardians and the Rays, who have, money that wouldn't even match the bullpens of like the Mets and the Dodgers. Like their bullpens or the infield of the Mets makes more than the entire roster for the Tampa Bay Rays. Like, we gotta have a conversation for those teams actually starting to spend and not trying to be broke boys so they can get some profits off of owning an MLB team, even though they're not investing in it at all. Like, that to me should never be the case. So just like we have that conversation, that has to be conversation when it comes to limiting transfers too. Where, okay, if we're limiting a transfer, that coach also has to be stuck where he is. Why don't we have a rule where, again, just like in the NBA or the NFL, you want to talk to a team that has a head coach that's under contract, they got to give you permission, and if they agree to let him go to that school, you got to compensate them. You got to compensate them in a major way. I know there's contracts that have these big buyouts, and I guess that the buyout is the way, but I think it's got to go further than that. I don't know what system I would put in place. I'm not saying that, again, a coach can't go to another place, but there needs to be just this way more restrictions to allowing guys to simply say, oh, I know I promised all you kids, you 18-year-old kids, hey, I'm going to be here for 3-4 years, I'm going to see you graduate, and then you make the tournament one time and it's sayonara. Like, I got no diss for the guy that from USF that's now the coach of Providence, but like, this guy was basically saying that, I had people saying that they're searching for my players. I will fight people who are trying to take my players away. Like, that was actually one of the comments that came out from the new Providence coach, whose name I'm forgetting right now, Brian Hodgson. Brian Hodgson was like, I know you'll recruit my players, and I will fight you if I find you. Like, and I've seen other coaches say, like, basically variations of that. Like, but then this guy, at the drop of a hat, leaves those kids because he was poached and recruited by some other school. Those kids who have to stay at South Florida, do they get to fight the fathers and the sisters of Providence College? Do the kids at Siena get to fight Carmelo Anthony? I hope they don't fight Carmelo Anthony. You know what I mean? Do they get to fight the administrators at Syracuse because they poached Jerry McNamara? Or Jerry McNamara would have stayed, he probably would have been pissed off that people were trying to poach his players from Siena. Like, it's just all hypocrisy, man. It's all hypocrisy. And I really hope that at a certain point we get this aspect under control. There's no reason for this. This is going to be professional sports. This doesn't happen in professional sports. You can't have a guy who just up and leaves for a better opportunity every point. And in fact, I think it actually would make college sports more interesting because you'd have coaches who probably wouldn't want to sign long-term deals and probably would want to make sure that they're content in certain spots and saying, oh, you know what, I'm doing a good job here. Maybe I won't sign a contract extension because maybe I want to see if I can get a pay raise from this school, or maybe in 3 years another job will open up and then I'll go because my contract's coming up. Like, or you have to get fired coaches, which is what happens in the NBA and the NFL. Like, you can't just get the best. You can't just be, I'm North Carolina, I fired Hubert Davis, but I can just get Tommy Lloyd, who's arguably one of the guys that they're apparently targeting. Like, that's not how it works. The Giants, they fired their coach. They did end up with a good coach, but like they couldn't just say, you know what, we're the Giants and we have all the cachet and all the hoopla of New York City and we're one of the flagship organizations of the NFL. We're just going to go and take Sean McVay because we can pay him more. They can't. I mean, Stan Kroenke is richer than everybody in the NFL, basically. He's the richest owner, I believe. But we can pay more than Stan Kroenke. Is New York the bigger market? Or take like Mike Vrabel. Be like, oh, you know what, Mike Vrabel, I know it's bad market. Made another bad example because it's Boston market, but whatever. Like, taking one of these guys, or taking Liam Cohen. That's a good example. Like, imagine if like the Giants were like, you know what, Liam Cohen, you had a good year with those little Jaguars. Oh, little Jacksonville, that's cute. Come over to New York. Here's $20 million. We'll double whatever you make for the Jaguars. Come over with a better team, better organization, more hoopla. Like, you would think that's ridiculous. It's the NBA, and if teams decided, you know what, I'm trying to think of some bad teams in the NBA right now. None of the teams are teams you ever want to play for. That's why it's hard to think of one. Well, okay, the Brooklyn Nets. Like, they are in Brooklyn, right? They are in New York. Like, Brooklyn Nets were like, oh, you know what? Like, we fired our coach. Oh, they're not going to fire Jordy Fernandez. But let's say they did. Oh, we're Brooklyn. So we're just going to You, Charles Lee with Charlotte. Yeah. Come over here. We're going to pay you $30 million to be our coach. And here's all our resources and our assets. Come over here. We're going to take that team's coach. Doesn't matter that he has a contract. Doesn't matter that he's built something there. Like, we would never accept that in professional sports. I don't know how many of you guys were clutching pearls at the Knicks asking for permission to talk to Jason Kidd when he was already coaching the Dallas Mavericks, saying, oh, this is unfair. Oh, they can't do that. Like, who do they think they are? But we accept it in college sports. Doesn't make sense to me. Coaches' contract should be binding. You have a contract, you got to live up to the contract, you got to stay with the contract, and you can't leave until your contract's up. And if you want to find a way to do compensation in order to make it happen, I think it shouldn't be, buying out the contract. It should be like you have to pay a fine or pay something to that school, pay something to their NIL fund, or you got to do something major, I think, to get out of that situation. Maybe you lose some salary cap money in this imaginary salary revenue cap that's supposed to be there for certain conferences, but we know they ignore. That's what I would do for college basketball. I would not allow guys to just go 1 year and then dip, but then next year we'll be complaining about how his players are being recruited by other people or things like that. Give me a break. It's like these guys are like, they have no honor. They have no honor. They have no level of character and consideration, and then they want to preach about, oh, it's so unfair, these kids making all this money, and they lied to me. I'm getting lied to, and then their agents are asking me all this stuff. Meanwhile, they're promising kids everything and then dipping in 1 year. I mean, come on, what are we doing here? Real quick before we get out of here, man, season 2 of Daredevil Born Again debuted. This is a program that is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Last time I checked, it was a 96 score on Rotten Tomatoes. Season 2, episode 1, debuted on Wednesday. I really like this episode, man. We'll obviously talk more about it on Hero Talk when we get a chance to Hero Talk sometime soon. But I dug episode 1. I know I heard some rumors some reactions that they thought the first few episodes was a little slow. I could kind of see that, but a lot happens in this episode. I mean, they pushed the storyline a little bit. You got Matt and Karen. Spoiler alert for anybody who's never seen this show or is worried about being spoiled. If you're worried, then fast forward or pause and come back in 10 minutes. I do have one more big announcement before I leave the show. But Matt and Karen now fully in their war against Fisk and his anti-vigilante task force that certainly does present parallels to some of what we're seeing in society today with ICE and immigration enforcement happening in the U.S. and the roundups that we're seeing and the mass deportation effort of the Trump administration. There are definitely some parallels to that. I hate to have like critiques in my head, and I don't really care what other people think. I just give you guys my thoughts. I'm interested to hear people's perspective, but it doesn't like inform how I think. But I did see someone, and I actually got a lot of respect for Cam Dobbs. I think that's her name. For me, that's not her name. But I saw someone online who does movie reviews and TV reviews, and she was saying she didn't like the season because she felt like it kind of yada-yada'd a lot of different important aspects to get to this point, which I kind of disagree with, because I felt like maybe the yada-yada happened last season, but I thought where they started this season made a lot of sense. Matt and Karen, not only are they obviously in this full-fledged war with Fisk, where Matt has essentially abandoned the Matt Murdock persona, or his actual life as a lawyer. He's missing. We see the law firm is like basically, in chaos because he's not around. But he's abandoned the Matt Murdock persona. He's on the run because he is a wanted fugitive for helping aid vigilantes. We all know because Fisk knows he's Daredevil, but that's the actual word they're putting out there, that he's aiding vigilantes. Karen Page is also wanted, so they're living upstairs in an abandoned Jody's bar, as it looks. As someone said, it looked like a crack house, which is kind of funny. But they're also in love. They're not only obviously fighting this war, but they're also in a relationship. I saw someone say, "Oh, that seemed a little rushed." I don't know. They've been a will they, won't they couple forever. They're fighting this war that we're now months removed from last season. Like, I think it would be the practical thing that they would start with this. Also, they've been together before, so I didn't need a will they, won't they for another 5-6 episodes. I'm perfectly fine with them saying, yep, nope, Matt and Karen are a couple, and we'll see if they survive this, because I know the showrunner said that, you know, he sees Karen Page as Matt Murdock's Mary Jane Watson. Some similarities there, some differences, but I think Matt has a lot more love interest and Peter has a lot more serious love interest than Peter Parker does, besides Karen. But I could live with that, and I'd understand that for sure. So we'll see how it goes. I want to see how the story plays out, but I was fine with that development. And some people have used the complaint about Fisk and him feeling like a Trump one-for-one comparison, maybe that being too on the nose. That I kind of disagree with, because number one, the last season, in terms of what we were seeing from the roundups of what was happening with the anti-vigilante task force and locking people up and stuff like that, actually stuff that was all shot and happening before the Trump administration actually really got into the full swing of things. Remember, that last season started early last year. That's like the beginning of the Trump administration. They hadn't actually done anything yet. So I think it's one of those life imitates arts things, as opposed to like, oh, they're just taking what they think is happening in the world, whether you agree with it or not, or you believe it or not. They're taking what is the world and just putting it on Wilson Fisk. It's like, no, this is what was written in the story. It would be weird if somehow it didn't look like how it looked in this show. And there are parallels that they lean into a little bit more in this season that makes sense, but it makes sense because of what we've seen over the last year or so. So I've actually enjoyed that. I'm very curious about a couple things. Very curious about Mr. Dismissal Charles' character. He could end up being, this is Matthew Lillard playing this role. Everyone wants to know who he actually is. I don't want to play that game, only because I'm always disappointed. Right? We know he has a relationship with Val, who's played by, of course, Julia, what's her name? Dreyfus. But I'm not, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I'm not gonna do the, aerospace engineer from WandaVision thing, or the Ralph Boner thing from WandaVision, or Mandarin, or there's so many of these things with Marvel. Now, they could learn their lesson, but there's so many things from Marvel where they present a character who's unique, or who has maybe a potential backstory that could be fun, that connects to the comics, that you kind of want to wrap your head around because he's this mysterious guy, when they very well could be presenting him as just a mysterious guy. And like, I saw the screenwriter say that when he thought about this character, he thought Matthew Lillard was the only guy that could play him. He could be thinking about, I want a Matthew Lillard type to be a government type that adds a wrinkle to Fisk's efforts to quote unquote clean up the city in New York. And I would love if he was see some of the conspiracies. Maybe he's Henry Gyrich. Maybe he's someone related to what could be in the future a mutant effort. I just don't want to go there. If it happens, I'll be solely shocked and surprised and happy and excited. I'm just not ready to go there right now. But I thought this episode was good. The action continues to be brutal in a way that I would really like. I think that there are multiple story threads that I think that are following that I think are still really interesting. I like the B.B. Ulrich and this deputy mayor guy, who's this young guy who definitely has no reason to be in this position, but he's, very loyal to Fisk. I think Fisk sees a lot of him in him, which is why he's put him to this position, and what he's doing with these government funds and how he's able to get this sick, loft right on the water because, Fisk owns the building. Like, they've got a lot of nice stuff cooking with this early season. The episode ends on an absolute bang with, Matt essentially being saved by Bullseye. Someone made the joke that it was funny that he wrote a message on his knife after he killed all the guys that had discovered that it was Matt Murdock who was under the mask, after Murdock or Daredevil gets kind of like PTSD as Cherry's heart starts to give out while he's being tortured by the task force people. He's fighting these task force guys. He tries to save him, and he hears him having heart problems and brings him back to what happened with Foggy, and they actually are able to beat up Daredevil and take off his mask and unmask him and determine that it is indeed Matt Murdock and what that would have meant, and that would have changed the entire course of the season. But then there you had Bullseye, who we don't see, but we start to see daggers being thrown and guys getting killed everywhere from a distance. And then one dagger hits the ground, and you read it, and it says, you owe me one, or you're welcome, something like that. Which is funny because it's like, well, Matt can't read. Though he doesn't know that. He doesn't know Matt Murdock is Daredevil. He doesn't know that he's blind. But it's funny. He wrote a message for somebody that can't read because he's blind. At least can't read words. So that was kind of an interesting way to end the story, end the show. But no, I'm excited, man. I thought this was a nice start to this. I think the Mr. Charles character, and I always like when Fisk has to like. I like Fisk when he's like just all encompassing, in charge, and just pulling the strings of everything, and that's what we've seen him essentially every season he's been a part of Daredevil. Even when he's been locked up, he's been pulling all the strings. I kind of like this new dynamic that comes with him not necessarily having total autonomy with this situation with him and Mr. Charles. I like the idea that now there's someone he kind of has to answer to that's related to a person that's much bigger in the Marvel landscape in Val, Dan Legro-Fontaine. I think that is actually a dynamic they haven't explored yet. And Fisk having to, potentially like compromise. We don't really see that from him quite often. We saw a compromise with him in the beginning of season 1 where he's like, all right, if you're not Daredevil, I won't be Kingpin and I won't tell people who you are. Like we saw that with Matt Murdock, that then of course they thrown out the window by the end of the season. But otherwise, this is not a man who's very compromising at all. He's never compromising. In fact, he's very much always pulling the strings, very much trying to get his way. And now he has someone to answer to. And someone that it seems, one of the things about Fisk is you don't disrespect Val. You don't talk ill about Val. And someone who, for whatever reason, seems to have also either beef with Val or a willingness to kind of flex around Val, flex around his staff. He shows up and, in the middle of a meeting with, people from the state offices and is kind of flexing. And, Fisk said that he didn't like that. I saw some people rumor that they think that maybe this is actually Fisk's secret lover. We heard the story about, the reason why him and Val fell out was because he had some secret lover. And people were like, maybe this is it. And maybe that's why, he acted the way he acted and why Val's uncomfortable when he's there and the way he speaks about, oh, can we speak about this in the presence of your wife? And like, I don't know. I don't think that's where they're going. That'd be extremely controversial and piss off a lot of people. It wouldn't piss off me. I wouldn't really care, but I know a lot of people that would piss off some people. I don't think that's where they're going, but it was an interesting theory that I would be interested to see if that goes. But I'm not really interested in theories beyond that. Like, is he Henry Gyrich from the the anti-mutant efforts? Is he William Stryker or someone I've heard as well? Like, those are things that I'm just gonna let it play out. I'm just gonna enjoy the ride when it comes to following that stuff. I enjoyed the first episode, man. You guys check it out. Again, it's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. We'll have a full recap of this episode when I talk to my brothers on New Generation Hero Talk. When we record that episode. Packed weekend this weekend, so maybe not this weekend, but last week we recorded during the week. It may end up happening again when maybe we record on a Monday or something like that. I gotta talk to the guys to figure that out, but fun episode nonetheless. So this has been a fun episode of this show, this episode of 40 Days and Counting. And before I get out of here, I teased this earlier, and I'm ready to make the announcement. Now, I've been teasing this for weeks now. I'm not someone who teases things very often. I don't like teasing things because things fall through. And it's and I hate not following through on a promise or following through on a tease. I know there are plenty of people in this chat who have been on the Maggie and Perloff show and gotten on our ass for some of the bets that didn't get paid off, like Perloff driving to San Antonio or Maggie eating all those pancakes or waffles rather, because of Dak Prescott's contract. I don't love that aspect of it. Obviously, I couldn't do my bet, but I blew out my knee and I can't run. So I don't think that's going to get paid off because of that. I'm willing to do something else, but it can't be a physical activity. So I don't like teasing things. But I told you guys I got a very interesting call. This was actually during the last week of 4 Days before this. I got a very interesting call that I did not expect. And it brought together an opportunity that I did not think would ever present itself ever again to be honest. I was not expecting this to happen, but it is. And I'm really excited about it. I hope you guys will be excited about it too. Because I don't got a drum roll or anything, but Orange and Blue Bloods is back. That's right. Orange and Blue Bloods, a Knicks podcast hosted by me, EJ Stewart, returns for the indefinite future. So here's how this works again. I got a really awesome call. Shout out to the folks at Odyssey, the podcast division there. Those guys are awesome. They treated me very well, and a lot of respect for the team over there. Got a call about an opportunity. There's some interesting things about the call that I learned. I'm not gonna get too much into that, but the short story of it is I got word and an opportunity to say, listen, if you want to take back ownership of Orange and Blue Bloods, we will hand it over to you. So it says Odyssey original, but this is not an Odyssey product, to be clear. It will always be an Odyssey original because it was originated on Odyssey, just like I guess Daredevil was originally a Netflix show. So I guess in theory it's always a Netflix original, the first show, even though there's no more episodes. So it's an Odyssey original, but this is an EJ Stewart owned podcast. So I was handed over the keys to the feed and keys to everything. So this is a Knicks show that I originally hosted with my guy Tommy Beer. Shout out to Tommy Beer. He's been on 40 Days and 40 Nights. He will not be the regular co-host that we were a team. We did the show for 10 months, I think, 7, 9, 10 months. And he had to bow out, and the show ended up, I did a couple of solo episodes for that show, was suspended shortly after that. Again, show was suspended, but I had no thoughts that maybe it could potentially come back. And here, the original feed for Orange and Blue Bloods has been given to me. So now, if you want to hear my Knicks content, I will be doing Knicks content again. So head over to whatever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or TuneIn. Make sure you subscribe to Orange and Blue Bloods. That is going to be a new show that I'll be putting out. We'll be doing our first episodes next week. Tentatively, I'm thinking a Monday, Wednesday recording schedule. I don't think that's going to be a live show. I think that's going to be something that's recorded. I think it may still be on video, so it may be up on YouTube, but definitely won't be live. But we will record those episodes. They'll go up on our podcast channel. Again, search New Generation. Let me back that up. It's not on our podcast channel. So again, this is the original feed. So this is the one EJ podcast that you won't find on New Generation Podcast Network. So you actually have to search Orange and Blue Bloods. Subscribe, give us a 5-star review, do all the fun things I need you to do to support. That is where you'll find this podcast. Again, this is all kind of new, right? So does it eventually become part of the New Generation family? Do we eventually find a co-host? Those are things that are all TBD. But what better time to get involved in Knicks content creation and getting my thoughts out on the Knicks? You're probably wondering, hey, EJ did a whole show and didn't mention the Knicks once. It's also part of some house cleaning for this show too. I think it actually will help to, there will be shows where it makes sense to talk about the Knicks here, but I want to maybe keep a lot of Knicks content to the Knicks content space that I have, which is now official, Orange and Blue Bloods. Show that I did for a year with WFAN and Odyssey, and we did a kick-ass show. I thought we had a phenomenal show. Again, shout out to my guy Tommy Beer. Shout out to my producer Jimmy Jackson, who's also an awesome guy, really talented guy. And now the show is back. It's back. Solo dolo for now. I'm producing, I'm hosting. We'll see if we add some characters to the mix to make this fun. But it's going to be a fun venture that we're going to continue throughout the playoff run for the Knicks and the playoff journey and beyond that, because I have it forever. So it's not like something that's going to go away. So Orange and Blue Bloods returns. Really excited about this because the Knicks are in the midst of what's going to be a really important and perhaps transformational playoff push. You got questions about Mikal Bridges' fit. We had a team that just won 7 in a row before losing in pretty convincing fashion last night to the Hornets. Frustrating game to watch. I watched the whole game along with the March Madness games at the same time, so multiple screens on to watch this action. But this is a crucial year, a big year. So if you watch Orange and Blue Bloods before, you'll have game recaps, you'll have guests, you'll have fun commentary, engaging commentary, and just good old times, man. So want to make sure I gave a big plug for this. Again, if you want to find this podcast, search Orange and Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcast. This is not a New Generation Podcast Network show. It's not on there. So if you're gonna search it, you gotta search Orange and Blue Bloods. Actually simpler because instead of having to search through a feed to find the episodes you want, here every episode of this is gonna be just Orange and Blue Bloods, and maybe some other old WFAN stuff. But this is where you'll find Orange and Blue Bloods, my Knicks podcast. We'll record that likely next Monday be the first episode. So maybe, I don't know if I'm doing morning or nights, but it depends on when the Knicks play. But you'll have that podcast up shortly after that. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow, make sure you support, man. Greatly appreciate if you guys end up supporting me. Would greatly appreciate it. Orange Blue Bloods is back, man. That's a lot of fun. A lot of fun, a lot of exciting stuff happening here. Told you guys it's gonna be a big year for your boy. It's a lot. I'm being a little reflective here. Like, when Maggie Perloff ends as its current iteration or as its prior iteration, it's, a lot of question marks about what comes next for your boy. What comes next for you guys, a lot of questions about everything, about everybody in the squad. But for me, obviously, what comes next for me, right? And what am I thinking about? And that questions that I didn't know the answer to. So I really love where I've landed, man. Like, I really love the fact that I was able to do 40 days and 40 nights. I really love the fact that I've been able to then resume it, so to speak, with this spiritual continuation / sequel of 40 days and 40 nights with 40 days and counting. And now be able to add Orange and Blue Bloods, which was not the expectation. Like, this is why I talked about how, like, it was one of those things that really, truly, like, came out of nowhere. Like, I knew I wanted to do content after 40 days and 40 nights. I wasn't going to stay away forever. I was going to keep it going because I got all this time to do this. But I didn't know what it was going to be. And then as that's ending, I get a call being like, hey, you want to have Orange and Blue Bloods back? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to have Orange and Blue Bloods back. I hope the Knicks space is, I hope they didn't miss me too bad. Because now, again, you'll have an opportunity to check out your boy talking Knicks content. And again, we'll have some fun guests. I've already talked to my guy, Anthony Gallo. I'm sure he'll be a part of this show in some way, shape, or form. I already talked to my good buddy, of course, Tommy Beer, a former co-host. I'm sure he'll be on plenty of episodes. And you guys see the Knicks people I talked to. I've talked to CP, I talked to Manny Rodriguez, and there's plenty of other people that I haven't even talked to that I'm cool with that I would love to have come on to Orange and Blue Bloods. So if you guys want to know what EJ's thinking on the Knicks, there will be some segments in the show for 48 days and counting that will have some of that. But I'm really going to try to save a lot of that for Orange and Blue Bloods. And I think, again, this is all new. So still kind of thinking of what the show is going to be about. I probably also do a lot more NBA stuff too. Like, I do a lot of NBA content here, obviously, as well. But it will be a Knicks podcast that also probably talk about other NBA topics as well. So make sure you subscribe to that. Again, Orange and Blue Bloods, wherever you get your podcasts. Where the video is, TBD, that actually probably will just go on New Generation Media. But again, we'll figure that out at a later date. There you go. Hit the music, didn't go. Then it went the second time. That'll do it for this edition of 40 Days and Counting. I want to thank you guys so much for checking me out. Shout out to everybody in chat. Shout out to Spencer. Shout out to John. Shout out to Matthew. You guys were phenomenal as you always are. Be sure to follow me on X, EJ_Stewart, Instagram, Action EJ. Subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media on YouTube, and subscribe to us, the podcast, New Generation Podcast Network. I'll be back live Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. Be there or be square. I'm EJ Stewart. See you later.